sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Imran Salha. He is the Imam of the Islamic Center, and he is going to tell us a little bit about the Uncommitted campaign, as well as what I consider to be a huge update. Thank you so much for joining us, Imran.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure, and thank you for all that you do.
So I think I want to start off with the Uncommitted campaign, the beginning start of this campaign. I mean, obviously, this was during a time when I would say not too long after October 7th. And there was a big push from Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Just to refresh everyone's memory about this particular campaign, what was the original goal with the Uncommitted campaign?
Thank you so much. So I will say to start that I was one of the individuals that lent my personal support in my personal capacity to the Uncommitted campaign. To my knowledge, I do vividly remember that, this was something that was started actually from some voices in Minnesota that decided that they wanted to make a very clear statement, being that they were part of the effort to put certain representatives from the Democratic Party into office, that they wanted to make very clear their disavowal from the Democratic Party because of their inability to stop genocide. And when the meetings progressed, we decided to make this into it was decided to make this into a national call for action. Just so everybody who's listening is aware, yes, my name is Imran Salha. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I'm as American as Dunkin' Donuts and Domino's Pizza, but I am Palestinian. I am from the West Bank. And one of my distant relatives, Randa Ajaj, and I just want to say her name, in the West Bank, not even in Gaza, in the West Bank, 37 years old, was shot and killed in her car in the passenger seat while her husband was driving and her son was in the back seat. She was 37 years old and leaves 8 children behind. So, and this was on October 12th. This was right in the aftermath of everything that went down. So I want everybody who's listening to think about me, Imran, not the Imam of the Islamic Center of Detroit, but more so the individual who now has someone from his village in Palestine who was murdered. And those 8 children are now motherless because of the actions of the illegal Zionist regime that is Israel. So now I voted for President Biden in 2020. And this is because, again, to bring personal elements to it, I also at the time, throughout the Trump presidency, I was imam of another center in Michigan here, and involved within the community. And I know personally individuals who their families were broken apart based on the ruthless immigration policies of President Trump. So at the time, and trust me, it was not unknown to me how much of a Zionist President Biden was. But again, in good faith, trying my best not to be a one-issue voter, looking for the greater good of this country, I thought that it would be best for me to cast my ballot for President Joe Biden. My story is reflective of the story of a large majority of Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians and the supporters of Palestine alike, okay? Being that they supported President Joe Biden and then felt betrayed. And it's not just about me. Look at Chicago, Al-Fayoumi, 9-year-old boy, was stabbed 26 times by his landlord, making it unequivocally clear that this was a bigoted attack against Palestinians. And he stabbed this young boy, this angel, 26 times in front of his mother. And his mother lost consciousness only to awaken in the hospital to find out that her son did not live. So all of these stories are stories that were boiling our blood, making us feel that something needs to be done. And when we go to the commander-in-chief to look for solace, we are only met with statements like false stories regarding beheaded babies that led to actual beheaded babies in Gaza, false allegations of rape that the Times of Israel themselves rejected, saying that there isn't even enough time for us to do analysis to indicate that sexual assault occurred. And although he came out with public statements with his voice, his retractions were only written statements that nobody would read in the aftermath, leading to the emboldening of bigoted individuals like the individual who murdered Wadi al-Fayoumi and many other stories that we saw. Hisham, Kinan, and Tahsin, 3 young men in Vermont that were shot because they were wearing their kufiya. A man in Austin, Texas at a protest that was stabbed and almost lost his life. And the stories do not end. Okay, not to mention the threats here in Michigan. Someone from Farmington Hills was threatening to come to Dearborn to kill all the terrorists. Okay, and after all this, and the final point is, what was President Joe Biden's response? Don't listen to the statistics that you receive from the Palestinians. Yep. So with all of this in mind, it was very clear that we were betrayed. And it was our responsibility.
Oh, Imran, really quick. I think Eric's trying to tell you your audio, if you can get a little bit closer to the phone, because when you turn your head, your audio goes out a little bit. Sorry about that.
Sure. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So because of this, I want to make it clear. I believe that I committed a moral sin voting for President Joe Biden. And I feel as though that I owe it to my people as I cast that ballot to now utilize my voice to cancel out the moral depravity that I caused with my vote, to cancel that out by ousting him from power and tying the crime to the criminal. And so that was essentially, you could say, was the philosophy behind, the Uncommitted campaign. Uncommitted because of 221,000 residential units that were destroyed. Uncommitted because every single university in Gaza was destroyed. Uncommitted because there's not a single functional hospital that's left. Uncommitted because Dr. Sufyan Taya, one of the world's most internationally renowned physicists, was murdered. Uncommitted because Dr. Rifat Al-Ar'ir, who was a poet and an English language major and a professor in Gaza, was murdered. Uncommitted because he wrote a poem dedicated to his daughter right before he died, titled "If I Must Die, Then Tell My Tale." And uncommitted because a few months down the line, they killed his daughter that he dedicated the poem to. So all of that uncommitment was due to the bloodshed and due to the destruction. 2.2 million people, 100% of the population is displaced. So that was what drove us to that point. We were the reason, especially in Michigan, as to why he won. And we want to make sure in the swing state that we are in to utilize our voice to punish genocide. That was the mantra, I guess.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say I'm incredibly sorry for your loss. I've heard so many stories about people that have lost family members, whether it's in the West Bank or Gaza. It's incredibly sad. Ronnie Akalik was just talking about this recently, and she said it's like the U.S. government doesn't even, like, the people, they don't even care. Like they just hate us, etc. And she's based in Lebanon, if I remember correctly. One of the things that bothered me initially in the beginning with the Uncommitted campaign was I felt like somehow it seemed to become Rashida Tlaib's project for whatever reason, I guess because she made an ad where she was saying, Biden, we will not vote for you, etc. And what I found was just really unsatisfying to me is that, okay, what happens after you are uncommitted, right? What happens if Joe Biden does not move? And I knew he would not move. So my whole thing was I felt like Rashida Tlaib, being the voice that she has and being a member of Congress, especially considering she's been censured, so she's not a favorable Congress member in DC, right? Maybe in her community, but not in DC. So I wanted Rashida Tlaib and others to push members of the Uncommitted campaign to move away from the Democratic Party, to vote for someone who is correct on this issue, someone who has been out in the streets fighting for the Palestinian people. And what I noticed is that she was not willing to go to that step, because I knew, and I tried to be as frank about this as possible, but I knew that Joe Biden was not going to cave on Israel. I knew that he was going to go with what Israel wants because he's in bed with the Israeli lobby. Like, he takes money from them. He called himself a Zionist, etc. So I knew that he was not going to budge on that particular issue. So when I found out that it seemed like it's like, what was the next plan? I'm like, okay, he won the primary, which we knew was going to happen anyway. And then we're going into the general election, right? So then all of a sudden, Joe Biden is taken out. He decides to drop out of the race, and Kamala Harris enters the race, which nobody voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 Democrat primary. So she was selected. And then I started to notice things as time went by, and I said, no, there are candidates that are running outside of the duopoly that are out in the streets fighting for Palestinian people, like Jill Stein, like Cornel West, like Claudia de la Cruz. They've been out there fighting for the people. And I didn't like that. I felt like Rashida Tlaib herself should have left the Democratic Party, not just for what they did to her people, but the way that they have treated her personally. And she should have ran as an independent because she already has the support from people within her community. But things did not go that way. And I want to hear from you. Why do you think the Uncommitted campaign was not willing to move outside of the duopoly?
I think your observation in terms of the Uncommitted campaign is very accurate. And this was a fear of mine from the beginning. You seem like a very sincere, straightforward person, and I like that. So I would like to maintain that same level of transparency with you. One of my greatest fears with the Uncommitted campaign is that, to a certain extent, I believe that the campaign, and this is my opinion, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, and I have every right to do that. This is America, right? I believe in many ways the Uncommitted campaign was co-opted and was infiltrated by people that have benefit in maintaining their loyalty to the Democratic Party. And to me, I believe that politics should be an extension of ethics, okay? The code of ethics should not be suppressed by the geopolitical interests, whether that's personal or national, etc. And I feel as though that people started putting their personal interests in front of the people that we are advocating for. So if we have people in Gaza, we have people in Palestine that are paying the price with their families. I have community members from my mosque that lost over 200 family members from their family. There are families that have been wiped off of the civil registry. Okay, I have community members in my mosque that were too scared to do their funeral services for their family members because of the intimidation tactics that exist against Muslims today in light of the current events. So with all that being said, I really thought that this was going to finally wake us up to engage the political process from the perspective of ethics, not from the perspective of personal gain and benefit. Now, I will say, I don't know, and I don't know the reasons behind, why a certain individual, and you mentioned Rashida, and I consider Rashida a friend, and I think that she really is, doing excellent work. So I am happy with the work that she is doing, and I'm proud to have someone on the ground that is advocating for our people. And I am unsure as to why there is this maintenance of a connection to the Democratic Party. And I am absolutely unequivocal in my complete disgust with anything that has to do with the two-party system. And it's very clear, you know, especially like I want to talk about the Muslim community for a second, because we're a minority among many other minorities, right? And our experience was that in order for us to maintain our rights, it is essential for us to engage the Democratic Party. Many of, you know, the leadership from the Muslim community had an open door, open line of communication with the Clintons. So this line of communication created a mirage of inclusivity. It created a mirage of, safety, and a mirage of advocacy for our causes that we held near and dear to our hearts. But the reality of the situation is we've been engaging the political process in this very active, systematic way for the past 2 to 3 decades, the Muslim Arab community, let's say. And we came to the point, and this is my message to those who are uncommitted: you are not truly uncommitted. You are not truly uncommitted, because truly uncommitted people, the parties that brought this genocide and orchestrated it against our people, will not bring us back to the same status quo politics that brought us to the position that we are in today. For almost 2 to 3 decades, we've been engaging the Democratic Party, and we could not even get a bottle of water into Gaza.
Yeah.
Where is the value of that engagement? So I absolutely lend my support to your voice in that there is no way that we can just engage every 4 years with the mentality of the lesser of two evils, because we allowed, because of this, for a genocide to occur right before our eyes. You know, and I have so much to say. I feel so bad. I feel like we should have came to this a long time ago. Barack Obama dropped a drone bomb on Pakistan every 20 minutes on average throughout the 8 years of his presidency. Why did we forgive him for that? Why did we give him a second term? Why did we not reevaluate after Fallujah in 2003 when they destroyed Iraq? Why did we forgive? Why did we forget? We have our numbers in the millions. America has not forgotten, and it is equally as gruesome about upwards of 3,000 individuals that were murdered on 9/11, which is a travesty. What about the millions that suffered? Suffering actively until today? Why have we forgiven this? The moral fabric of America has clearly been in decline, and I believe that yes, although there is much blame on the top, we are part of the checks and balances that should restore balance with our votes and with our engagement. So I hear you and I agree. We cannot just return to status quo politics. People are dying every day because of status quo politics.
100%. And I want to show you this from a statement from the co-founders of Uncommitted. This is with an interview with CNN. Layla and Abbas, the co-founders of the group, I'll highlight this for people to see. The co-founders of the group expressed to Harris and Walls their concerns about the U.S. supplying weapons to Israel and the plight of Palestinian civilians in Gaza, according to a statement from the group. And they went on to say this: the VP was receptive. I thanked her for the attention her staff is giving to our request for a meeting about an arms embargo. She thanked me for being there and for my work. That's coming from Abbas, who is an uncommitted delegate to the DNC. An uncommitted delegate to the DNC. I just want to highlight that so people understand where this is going. It feels fruitful. We're hopeful that she will engage substantively with our request to an arms embargo that stops sending bombs to kill people we love. I want to get your take here about the statement from the co-founders of the Uncommitted campaign, because I have pointed this out numerous times that Kamala Harris's advisor has made a statement, not just on Twitter, but also to different news outlets, that Kamala Harris is not in agreement with stopping arms to Israel. In fact, thank you, Colin, for this. The U.S. just committed $20 billion in weapon sales to Israel, with contracts expected to be fulfilled in the long term. This war is not ending anytime soon with either Harris or Trump. So why do you think the co-founders are sending this message?
I'm extremely disappointed by this message. And I will say, because I always believe it's important to recognize the good that everyone offers. What Layla Al-Abid and what Abbas Alawiya, organized alongside Lexis Dina Zidan and many other leaders in the Michigan community, what they organized with the Uncommitted campaign to get 130,000 voters to vote uncommitted, in my opinion, is historic and praiseworthy. My problem was, and my fear ended up coming true, is that they are engaging the political process with the philosophy that we're Democrat by default.
Oh, Amon, I think
by default. We don't owe.
I think you froze for a second. I'm sorry. Can you? Uh-oh. I think he froze. Let's give him a minute. Let me tell him here in the private chat. Amon, can you you okay? Okay. All right. Sorry. Last thing you said was Democrat by default.
So yes, can you hear me now, Sabby?
Yeah.
Excellent. So we are not Democrat by default. We don't owe them our votes. And it's very frustrating that we continuously engage in this way, and especially when I was reading the rhetoric regarding like the decision to go from Shapiro the Zionist to Waltz the Zionist. So we now have a more mild Zionist. And it's more insulting because I really want to ask those who entertained this meeting with Kamala Harris regarding this decision to bring Waltz on board, the Arab Muslim community and like-minded people, supporters of Palestine in Minnesota, there's not that big of a time difference between us and them. Did you consult with them about their governor? Did you see their experiences with their governor regarding support, a blind support for Israel? Was there any consultation whatsoever? Or was this just an executive decision that you took on your own behalf in order to, maintain once again some level of engagement with the Democratic Party? That's what it's coming off as. It's coming off as we are trying to show that we are making moves, but this is not a move, okay? We are getting played. They know that they can make it seem, though, when I say they, I'm referring to Kamala Harris and this whole campaign. They know that there are certain impressionable individuals utilizing the boogeyman of Trump in the same way that the illegal Zionist regime of Israel utilizes Hamas to justify their iniquities and their evil. Kamala Harris is utilizing this red herring of Donald Trump in order to maintain some level of, more good moral standing in front of the public. You are giving her more ammo to do that when you praise her for moving to from Shapiro the Zionist to Waltz the Zionist. You're giving her more ammo to prove, look, I am the good guy in all of this. You can't blame me. So this to me was a very disappointing statement. And it was a fear, not just of myself, but many others who were involved, that the Uncommitted campaign was going to be the best amount of unity we were going to be able to get our hands on. After that, the people who had their loyalty to the Democratic Party, and it didn't take long to come out. Very soon after, there were little statements and op-eds here and there saying that if it came to it and it was Trump versus Biden, I would have to vote for Biden. And once again, I mentioned this on a recent video that I recorded. I want somebody to please articulate to me, what is it that you will endure? It is January 2025. Let's do an experiment, guys. It's January 2025. Donald Trump is the president of the United States in the worst case scenario. What exactly are you going to endure that is more severe than beheaded babies? What are you going to endure that is greater than the pain of genocide? A man today in Gaza, I can't even believe it. A man just today in Gaza, his wife and his twin children home to go get their birth certificates, only to come back and find that his twin children and his wife were murdered. What are you going to endure that is worse than this? My vote, whether it's for third party or Jill Stein or Cornel West or whoever it is, my vote is to punish genocide. My vote is to punish genocide. And the final point that I want to say to those who had these conversations with Kamala Harris, what did she do? Action to prove that she is distanced from the actions of President Joe Biden. I don't want to hear words. What did she do in action? Because it is not the time for us to accept words. We need action. If she does not entertain action because she is in office now, she is acting as if when I become president, you're there now. Do something about it. So I really apologize, by the way, about my emotions. It's just really something that's near and dear to my heart. But the reality is that she has done nothing. And her policy towards what has happened is completely identical to that which the Biden administration has contrived against the innocent Palestinian people. What is being reported as close to 200,000 innocent civilians either died by airstrikes, by murder, or by disease, or by intentional starvation. All of that Kamala is responsible for as well. And if people want to name the innocent civilians of Gaza as collateral damage, then Kamala Harris can end her political career and can lose her chance at the presidency as collateral damage as well.
And no need to apologize for your emotion. It's needed. Like I totally get, I totally understand. And this makes me wonder something, because the way that they were just able to come in and say, oh, we think that she'll do the right thing and she's willing to stop the arms to Israel. Kamala Harris is on. Right. Kamala Harris is on video telling people she supports giving the weapons to Israel. So I don't know whatever they said she told them behind closed doors, something does not add up to me. And it makes me wonder, do you feel that at least those two particular people, the co-founders, especially considering that Abbas is a delegate for the Democratic National Convention, do you feel that those two, the co-founders of the group, made a deal, some type of deal with Kamala Harris?
I wouldn't be able to know. And, I honestly, we live in a time where you can't really put your finger on what the potential scenario is. But what I will say is this. I like to refer to my track record. I am not perfect. I make mistakes as well. But what I will say is this. I was asked to meet with officials from the Biden administration a few months ago. Okay. And I rejected it. Because they wanted to send officials regarding aid and food. And I made it very clear to them, I don't want your damn food. I don't want food from the same people who are killing my people. Why would I, you know how demeaning that is, especially like, cultures that have like poetry about being a warrior and being courageous and having chivalry and having honor. When you come from this culture of honor, you respect yourself too much to accept aid or have conversations about food with your murderer. So, in my opinion, I do believe that in terms of principles, this is a major disappointment. For there to be any engagement with the Democratic Party that has murdered our people time and time again is absolutely unacceptable. And I do believe that my sister Layla Al-Abid and my brother Abbas Alawiya really must reevaluate the way that they are engaging, because there is so much good that can come from their work that it would be very sad to lose their organizing power, a group that is simply using them, co-opting their skills for their political interests. You will not outplay them. Against what they did, to be very clear, and I believe that they must retract as soon as possible, with all my due respect to the work that they are doing.
And I do want to show people this here. Also, in that same interview with CNN, Assad, who is one of the co-founders, the Uncommitted movement. He is the one that is a delegate for the DNC. It goes on to say here, it says, Assad, the chief deputy council executive of Wayne County, who supported the Uncommitted movement during Biden's presidency, told CNN Thursday he is now endorsing Kamala Harris, saying she represents the true spirit of our nation and values. This does not make any sense to me because, again, Kamala Harris has just, and I'll just push up here so you guys can see the statement from her advisor, which the Uncommitted leaders of the Uncommitted tried to say that this person is like a Republican or something like that. That's not the case here. And also, if a presidential candidate has a problem with their advisor, they can always fire that advisor and hire someone else. These things happen all the time. Let me scroll up here.
Yes.
And I'll just,
as for As'ad Turfa, it's funny because you're talking about all the people like around the block. Like, these are people that we interact with all the time. And I have to say, the most disappointing statement that I have read in the past 10 months was the statement of As'ad Turfa. Okay. Completely disappointing. And to be honest, again, as you know, I'm a religious leader. I lead a community, and I like to engage with circumstances, with, ethics, godliness. I don't like to assume. I don't like to even, cast aspersions upon people's intentions. But the reality is that there are certain positions that you take where you make it almost impossible for your action to be interpreted other than some level of vying for your own personal gain. And in my opinion, with all due respect, I believe As'ad's endorsement was for personal gain only. There is no reason for such a strong endorsement to be made without some level of, experiencing a benefit. And, again, I am not aware of what happens behind closed doors, but I really, really would be willing to bet on the fact that this was not because he believes that Kamala is actually, best, or that we have any right to dismiss the murder that was happened by, some form of, I don't know what you want to call it, political strategy. I am absolutely, I just want to say very disappointed by the statement that he made. And the only interpretation that I could find for such an action is that there has to be some level of personal interest in it for him to make such an endorsement. It's unacceptable. Yeah.
This is correct. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but there was an interview someone sent to me as well with Cornel West, where he mentioned that they contacted him. They contacted him asking him to drop out and to offer him something as part of, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get everybody else, out of the way. And I want to show people what the advisor said, because this is very important. The advisor said the VP has been clear. She will always ensure Israel is able to defend itself against Iran and Iran-backed terrorist groups. This is coming from Phil Gordon. He's the advisor. She does not support an arms embargo on Israel. That part right there is very important. She will continue to work to protect civilians in Gaza and to uphold international humanitarian law. This is false. And I want to explain to people how this works. If you are still giving Israel weapons, Israel is still going to kill children. They are still going to kill people in Gaza. Also, this extends far beyond Gaza. We also have to talk about the West Bank, people being pulled out of their homes, the land expansion that they're trying to do now in the West Bank. That was happening before October 7th, right? So
Absolutely.
People have been killed in Gaza before October 7th and in the West Bank. So the thing is, Kamala Harris has been playing this game, and this is what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, where she tries to stay in the middle on this issue, where she'll tell Netanyahu that Israel has a right to defend itself, but then she'll tell Palestinian protesters behind closed doors, I'm interested in pursuing an arms embargo, but they just gave money to Netanyahu. So people are being played, and I want people to really wake up. And what is disturbing to me is that with all the energy that we had out in the streets, with all the people protesting across the world, I am seeing another repeat of BLM, where the grassroots efforts were huge and strong across the world, but a couple of people decided to sell out. And that's what it seems like is happening now with Uncommitted, because to me, it does not make no sense. Why are you supporting Kamala? He endorsed Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris they are still giving Israel weapons. People are still being killed in Gaza. It is the Biden-Harris administration. Kamala Harris still won't even call this a genocide. Just because she said the word ceasefire, and then there was a loud clap, and then after that, she said for 6 weeks. Everybody's saying ceasefire now. That has been co-opted. So the point is, Kamala Harris does not recognize that it is a genocide. Kamala Harris is not denouncing Israel. Kamala Harris said she's going to continue to give Israel weapons to defend itself, which means this is all BS.
I'm here. Yes. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. So you were saying Kamala Harris, she won't refer to this as a genocide, etc.
That's right. She still won't call it a genocide.
Yeah. You reminded me of something. So I brought up how I was invited to speak with certain officials from the Biden administration. And I remember, I won't mention who, but there was a certain representative from a certain organization that was trying to push me to meet with the officials from the Biden administration. I said, what is the topic of the conversation? He said, number one, aid. Number two, because I told them the main thing that I'm concerned about is a ceasefire. The ceasefire needs to happen immediately. Okay. And we need to bring up the Leahy laws, which don't allow for America to give aid to an entity, a foreign entity that is committing or convicted of war crimes. Okay. So I said, these are my two main points. If this is on the table, then maybe there's a discussion that is warranted. And he sat down and he told me, we're going to talk about aid. We're going to talk about ceasefire and the Leahy laws and the Genocide Convention, all that good stuff. We're going to talk about that, but also we're going to talk about diversity in all of the, national security, council, to make sure that Arabs and Muslims are represented at every level of security. I said, you guys are going to get played. When I want to say no to someone, I tell them when they want one or two things, I put 5 things on the agenda. And then that way, when we leave the meeting, I can say, I gave them 3, but I said no on 2. And that's exactly what they did. They sat down with them. A ceasefire wasn't called. There was nothing brought up regarding the Leahy laws. It was just emotional. It was talk. And they were able to walk away and say, well, we met with representatives from the Palestinian community, etc. So this is what I feel is exactly happening to the people from the Uncommitted movement. They are making these meetings, and she will say, yes, let's talk about an arms embargo. And she will be able to bring up, oh, you know what, while we're here, let's talk about the governor, or my VP, okay? I will change the VP choice. How about that? And then they walk away thinking that they won. And even with all due respect, even people like Linda Sarsour were hailing this as if this was like a win. This is a win for our movement. What kind of win for our movement is it? It is not a win for our movement when you go to the meeting seeking an arms embargo and they simply polish the image of the vice president from staunch Zionist to mild Zionist, and they're all the same anyways. So we really are, as you are saying, getting played. We need to engage in a very principled fashion. And as you said something golden. I believe as an imam and as a representative of the people, my activism has to be closer. It has to be purely, not just closer, purely grassroots. We have to stop leaning to interests, personal interests and other gain. No, it is about the movement. If they're paying the price with their blood, okay, then we need to pay the price by maintaining our principles because they need us. They have to earn our votes.
So one more question
to do that. Yeah.
One more question for you, Imran. So would it be correct to assume that the majority of the grassroots activists for Uncommitted do not feel this way, are not ready to endorse Kamala Harris?
And I'm telling you, maybe I shouldn't reveal this, but there is a movement that will be coming out called the Truly Uncommitted, because they are extremely disappointed with the nature of, the way this movement really has been co-opted to simply become another mouthpiece, as if there aren't enough mouthpieces already for the Democratic Party. And that's unacceptable. And we won't allow for that to be the case for our people who are being murdered up until this very moment. The water bottles that you drank at those meetings with your fancy, representatives, that's probably more water than what the people of Gaza have drank for the past 10 months. So, unacceptable. The uncommitted movement is moving in an unacceptable fashion.
Thank you so much, Imran. Thank you so much for your time. I will stay tuned. I'll keep my eyes peeled for that, because I think Kamala Harris feels like she's got it in the bag here. And I don't know. The polls are showing it that way, but I don't know. That's not what I'm hearing from people on the ground.
Absolutely. I pray for the best, and I really appreciate, your efforts in highlighting all of these matters. And, these are very important conversations, and I feel really blessed to have been here today. And thank you so much. And, make sure to, to everybody listening, I really ask you all to continue to be a voice. These conversations matter. I've met with people, I've spoken to people, through Palestine and through the advocacy for it in ways that I really haven't ever before. So I'm really grateful to every single person of conscience who takes it upon themselves to learn and to speak, because we believe as Muslims, as Abraham was told in the middle of a barren desert, speak the truth, O Abraham, and the people will come. And I really believe that that is the case with this matter. And I pray that we all are gathered in a liberated Palestine one day to enjoy the good food that we have to offer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and hang in there.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye. All right, guys. Shout out to Imran for coming on to the show. Again, a viewer reached out to me and connected me with him because, again, I don't know, man. Like, I'm starting to see similarities between what happened with BLM, and I think about all the movement that was on the ground with BLM, at least the grassroots, and how there was co-opting with BLM Global Network. And it just sounds like this sounds similar, and it's a mess. And so I appreciate people like him being the voice for the other people who have not sat down with presidential candidates to get their voice heard as well, so you can understand how other people are actually feeling that were a part of this. That's very important to hear. And I also want to tell people again, now do you see why a lot of times as an activist and an organizer, I don't really want to organize with people that are in that do-op. You see why? Because what happens is, like, they come in and they try to co-opt it. And I've seen this with multiple events and multiple movements. So this is why I don't really try to go that road. Sorry, there's something on my eye. It's bothering me. Okay, anyway. Anywho, guys, we do have more stories to discuss for you tonight. So don't go anywhere. Let's go to some of these comments. We'll shout out patrons, and then we'll go through that wonderful thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to the comments here on YouTube first. Thank you so much for the super chat, Andre. Do you think if Jill Stein picks Nora Erekat as VP, it'll be a game changer? It could be, and I don't know who she's going to pick. I will be a part of her VP panel on Friday. There's a number of us that are going to be present for that, but I have no idea who she's going to pick. Shout out to Energy Launderer for becoming a YouTube member. That is a long name. Energy Launderer, traveling at the speed of love. Sounds like the name of like a 1970s album. Like, like, I don't know, maybe like the Beatles when they got into their spirituality phase, Shout out to Colin. Thank you. The Palestinian/Arab community needs to take this stance. RE Gaza. No tangibles, no vote. I hear you. Thank you, Nivak. Kamala is only leading in the polls because she hasn't said anything. Once she begins her psycho babble and cackling, she will drop in the polls. And I see you have a picture there of Red Fox, man. We were just talking about, this is funny. We were talking about the show Sanford and Son a couple of days ago, about how you probably couldn't have that show on TV today because of some of the things that were said. Thank you, CM. Nope, don't apologize. Democrats are rage-inducing. Thank you, Anthony. Layla is Tlaib's sister. Gravy train with the Dems. Thank you for that, Anthony. Thank you, Jen. Dr. Jill Stein for president. And thank you, Super Seamster. Bringing the truth as usual, Sabby. Bakerfield, California. What's up? Let's go to that comment on Rockfin. Yeah. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin Hemp Car, International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, a leading medical journal, published a study. Cancer, infant mortality, and birth sex ratio in Fallujah, Iraq, 2005 to 2009, which says Fallujah's increase in infant mortality, leukemia, and cancers exceeds those reported by survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, and that's due to war. Ay. All right, guys, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. We will do call in tonight. Don't forget to answer that poll question there, because I'm curious to see. I didn't peek at it this time. I'm curious to see why you think Kamala Harris is now leading in the swing states. So we will touch on that when we get to that story. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support, folks. Whoop, I'm just fixing my mic there. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. There's Sabsters as well. There's also a group called Sabbies. Dun, 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 dun. I'm so corny, I know. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Young Skate Lord. I like that name. Some of you guys come up with pretty creative names. Skate Lord. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your support. We have more stories to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, so let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail. You guys like the pink tonight? Yeah, it's a little bit of a different shade of pink. It's not usually what I go with, but here I am. It's more pink than I thought it would be. Like, I don't know. Anywho, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing Kamala Harris is leading in swing states. There's Kamala there smiling, and there's Donald Trump like, what the? You can see that expression from like, what the? That kind of thing. We're also going to discuss crazy story. Tulsi Gabbard is back in the news. Tulsi Gabbard watch list. What the heck is going on there? And what has Tulsi gotten herself into this time, ladies and gentlemen? We're also going to discuss in the world of foreign policy. Did Ukraine just invade Russia? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, the hypocrisy. It's coming, folks. It's coming and leading us closer and closer to World War III. This is nutso. It's crazy. We'll get into all of that. As you can see, Putin looks very angry there in that picture. By the way, it was not easy for me to find a picture of him where he was like yelling, like, you know, I Googled like Putin yelling or whatever. There weren't that many pictures of him like yelling. And we were also going to discuss CNN pundit triggered this one. Okay, one of you guys sent me this. Somehow I missed this conversation, this panel here where they're talking about whether or not Kamala Harris is a Black American. And I got some things to say. We're going to get into that discussion about what that means. Like, what does Black American mean as an ethnic group? And of course, Uncommitted Exposed. Yes, Imran was just here to talk about what has been happening with the Uncommitted campaign. And it sounds like there's some co-opting going on there. And that is unfortunate to hear. All those stories, ladies and gentlemen, plus a poll that is pinned to the top of the live chat. And we will do call in after the show. So let's get with it. Okay. Yeah. I want to make sure I got this. Okay. We're going to get into the story about Russia and Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, it was just a couple of weeks ago where Zelensky and Putin were actually engaging in some type of peace talks. This is not to say it was going to fix everything, but they were engaging in peace talks. Now, this is after Donald Trump had reached out to Zelensky and they had a chat. Next thing I know, I see this video of Zelensky saying too many people are dying in Ukraine. We need to move towards some type of peace negotiation. So maybe Donald Trump is correct when he says that if he was still president, this conflict wouldn't have happened. Maybe he's correct about that. That being said, somehow it went from peace talks to Ukraine now invading Russia. It's just insane how this went from peace talks to this type of action here. Let's get started here with this clip from Fox News.
Yeah, Eric, the world is watching Ukraine as well, as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is acknowledging for the first time that his forces have pushed into Russia's southern Kursk region. It's Ukraine's biggest incursion into Russia so far. Zelensky says it follows hundreds of Russian attacks from Kursk this summer, and now Moscow is threatening to retaliate. Stephanie Bennett is live in London with the very latest. Stephanie.
Hey, Arthel. Yeah.
So I just want to add really quick here. I thought it was interesting. You know, Zelensky is not denying this, ladies and gentlemen. He is admitting to doing it. So
the back and forth continues. President Zelensky said that they deserved a fair response after claiming Russia had sent more than 2,000 airstrikes from the Kursk region over into Ukraine this summer alone. But first, within the last hour, President Zelensky also posting on X saying Russian forces have lit a fire at a nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine. So we're keeping an eye on that. But Ukraine's
pause for a second. So Zelensky is claiming that this is in response to attacks from Russia over the summer. But it was literally just like a week or so ago where there were peace talks. So how do you go from peace talks to, okay, I think I want to retaliate now? I don't understand this at all. And to me, it just seems like, again, like, I wonder if Zelensky was pushed by outside forces being the US government, being NATO, being the CIA, you know, things like that, because it doesn't make any sense. They were getting closer to getting this resolved. And now here we are.
President, as we know, for the first time confirming today that his forces are engaged in that major cross-border offensive into Russia's Kursk region, where Russia appeared to be caught off guard by the surprise attack earlier this week. Fighting there is now heading into its sixth day. Reports suggest more than 6,000 Ukrainian troops may have crossed that border. In a move that further indicates Russia's military is struggling, Moscow has declared a state of emergency in the Kursk region and has evacuated 76,000 civilians.
So Russia was surprised. Well, I would be surprised, too, if we were just talking about peace. We were just talking about the possibility of peace. I would be surprised, too, if you know, that's just like, let's say you had a feud with like your best friend and you guys have been fighting for quite a while. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you know, you guys decide, you know what, let's go ahead and just hash this out and let's just try to like rekindle or just have some peace. Then the next thing you know, like your best friend goes and sleeps with your boyfriend. You know, it's something like that. It doesn't make any sense. So, of course, Russia was surprised.
Ukraine is proving that it can indeed restore justice and ensure the necessary pressure on the aggressor.
Russia has also imposed a sweeping security regime, launching a counterterrorism operation, allowing.
And we have to stop it there because you can't see the rest of it. But yeah, there is Zelensky there, willing to just basically, he's taking responsibility for it. He's not trying to say he wasn't involved in this. He's claiming the responsibility. But Zelensky, you have some questions to answer. And honestly, the State Department should be pushing Zelensky on this, but they're not going to because they just want to take Russia down. The State Department should be asking Zelensky, how did you go from peace talks, negotiations into, yeah, I'm just going to do a sneak attack, son? How did you go from that to this, from 1 to 10, like so quickly? So quickly. And I got to tell you, Vladimir Putin is not happy about this, of course, as you can imagine. He does have some things to say, and I want to show you what he is saying here. Because now, and shout out to Hotspot for this one, Putin says there is nothing to negotiate with Kyiv anymore. Nothing. Who seek to attack civilians and nuclear power facilities. How do you negotiate with terrorists? To all appearances, the enemy seeks to improve its negotiating positions in the future. But what kind of negotiations can we even talk about with people who indiscriminately attack civilians? Let's go into this video here.
It seems obvious right now why the Kyiv regime refused our proposals to go back to a peaceful resolution. And just also why they denied any peaceful intermediaries from engaging in this conversation. The Ukrainian government is following the will of the West and its masters in the West. It's the West that's fighting us using the hands of the Ukrainians. They're trying to improve their negotiating positions in the.
So this is Vladimir Putin basically saying that even though it's Ukraine on the battlefield, it's actually the West that's behind it, that's doing the fighting, trying to push Russia, trying to cripple Russia. You know, the sanctions didn't work against Russia. Bombing the Nord Stream 2 pipeline didn't work against Russia. Russia is still prevailing. And I don't think the U.S. government likes that. Well, the West in general. And I know NATO sure as hell doesn't like that. You know, this is why some of us call for an anti-war movement. And it's really weird to me how some people saw that as a bad thing. Like, when you have the opportunity to have peace and you agree to working towards peace, and then you do a sneak move behind your opponent's back, that's cowardly. That's really cowardly. And that's what Zelensky did. They don't want any peace. Instead, they want to push us closer and closer to World War III. Let's think about what's happening right now. You have Russia, this war with Russia and Ukraine, which was almost going to be wrapped up if they would agree to the peace negotiations. You have a regional war brewing in the Middle East. Israel and Gaza, Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Iran. You have that brewing in the Middle East. And who do you think, what do people think is going to happen here, folks? Because the reality is, I don't think Russia's going to help out Israel. If anything, Russia's probably going to help out Iran. Think about these things. All of this happened under the Biden administration. Now, I have many things to criticize Trump's administration for, and I've done it over and over again. But I will say this. We did not have these issues, these two particular issues under Trump's presidency. Things have just gotten out of control. And as much as the State Department says that they do not want a World War III, or they do not want any escalation of nuclear arms, they're not really trying to do their best to stop it either.
Future, but what negotiations could we even talk about with people who are attacking civilian infrastructure, or trying to create threats for nuclear industry facilities? What is there to even talk about with them?
So you're hearing it right there from Vladimir Putin yourself, guys. He said, what is there to even talk about with them? This is a done deal. This is a wrap. So now we're looking at the possibility of Russia, seriously trying to take all of Ukraine. We're going to get into that in just a second, but you can see this is the nuclear power plant. I want to bring this up on the screen here. Here is the nuclear power plant in Ukraine on fire. And Zelensky is blaming Russia for that attack there. I mean, this is just, there's no good that can come from this for Ukraine. I told you guys already, they're already running out of men. They're pulling guys off the street to go fight. For what? It's obvious that they cannot beat Russia. This was a fool's errand. It really was. Now, Nico is going to point out something here that I think people need to listen to. Shout out to Nico and Nick for doing the hotspot vids, because they're really killing it here. Russia is likely to completely take over all of Ukraine after learning that NATO powers were directly involved in Ukraine's invasion of Russia territory. Like I said, why would you go from peace talks to all of a sudden escalation again? Listen to this.
Vladimir Putin has said that's it. There is no negotiating with Ukraine. They're in it for the long haul, and you can thank the West for that. Just the other day, Russia had to declare a state of emergency in the Kursk region after Ukraine invaded the Russian territory. Now, the White House in the United States, of course, is claiming that they had no prior knowledge of the attack and would communicate with Kiev to figure out what's going on. But I'm here to tell you that's bullshit, because Zelensky has spent the last couple of months begging the United States and the West to allow them to use their weapons to attack Russian territory. And then the Biden administration went on to give Ukraine the permission that they requested. And it's now being reported that 4 mercenaries from both France and Poland, 2 NATO powers, were involved in the incursions against Kursk, putting the final nail in the coffin of maybe having peace between Russia and Ukraine anytime soon. Many thought that perhaps Vladimir Putin would hold off until this election was finished, because Trump seemed to be aiming towards trying to organize peace between Russia and Ukraine. But now, because of Ukraine's brash actions and the West's influence, looks like he's taking it out of everyone else's hands, and there may not be a Ukraine.
This is very important for people to hear, because now, if you thought Putin was angry before, he's about to go DEFCON 3. Because how dare, like, I just don't get it again, unless, like I said, NATO pushing this, the West pushing this, NATO steps in and says, oh, no, you can't have no peace. Oh, no peace here. We're not doing no peace. We are going to keep this ball. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing here? This is not going to happen, right? So that's how we end up with this situation again. Like, you cannot sit up here and convince me that Zelensky thought of doing this all on his own. You can't convince me. So here we go with more war. Now, for the people who tell me that they care so much about the Ukrainian people, if that is the case, then you would want this war to stop. You would be calling for an end to this war, because more Ukrainians are dying. What happens when they run out of Ukrainians to put into the Ukrainian armies? What happens? I bet you Zelensky will run away. When all this is said and done, I bet you Zelensky will run off, move to another country somewhere, and that'll be the last you ever heard of him.
The end of this, Putin said that it seems obvious now why Ukraine has been refusing to engage with any attempts with Russia, as they've offered more chances to resolve things peacefully. And he says it's because their Western masters won't allow them to, and they're trying to gain a better position to negotiate. But how can you negotiate with people who are targeting purposely civilian infrastructure? A lot of people are confused as to how this could possibly gain Ukraine a strategic advantage, leaving and diverting sources from their own territory to attack Russian territory, when the whole goal is supposedly to defend themselves. The former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said that their goal was to get Russia to divert resources from Ukraine to defend themselves, but principally it was to prove to the West that Ukraine can still fight. And as a result, he said that Russia should expand its war aims to take all of Ukraine.
All of Ukraine. All of it. And honestly, at this point, can you be angry? Can you be angry at Russia at this point after what just happened? Ay.
Of which, by the way, Ukraine already has yielded 18% of its territory to Russia. A lot of people thought that maybe this election could change the outcome of this war and, stop allowing Ukrainians to be sent to the meat grinder to beat a country that they could never stand a chance against. But it looks like because of the actions of the West, Putin and Russia is taking this war out of their hands, and he's handling it his way now. So don't be surprised in a couple of years if you type in Ukraine to your Google Maps and all that pops up is Russia, because this ain't gonna end well for them. This is looking like another failure by another NATO proxy, adding to the whole list of L's NATO has taken over the last couple of years.
And all I can think about is all of the people that have died. All of the people that have died because of this proxy war. Knowing damn well they knew from the very beginning, NATO and the US government knew from the very beginning that Ukraine could not beat Russia. This was a death sentence. That would be like asking me to try to fight Hulk Hogan. Do I look like I can beat Hulk Hogan? No. Yes, he's older, but I still couldn't beat Hulk Hogan. So these are the things that we have to pay attention to, folks. The lives that have been lost, because corporate media is going to paint this in such a way like that Vladimir Putin is a dictator, is a brutal person, and that's all you should focus on. No, I'm telling you, you need to focus on the fact that NATO, they were the ones that provoked this. Now, I will say, and even Gray Zone has admitted this, that Russia was wrong to invade. But at the same time, Russia was provoked because NATO continued to expand and closer to Russia, which was not supposed to happen after the fall of the Berlin Wall. But they were doing it anyway. And I don't buy this stuff about, oh, they're going after Russia because dictator and Putin's bad, da, da, da. No, I think they're going after Russia because it's another country that is taking care of their people. And because it's another country that's doing well economically, so well economically that the sanctions put on them from the US government did not destroy them. They are still living fine. For all the people who continue to tell me that they love free market capitalism and capitalism is the way. You ever notice a lot of times those people seem to be fine with that as long as it's the US that is on top. But the moment there are other countries that start to rise economically and starts to become a competitor in that capitalist system, all of a sudden it's no, we have to stop them. So what they'll do oftentimes is that they'll implement coups. They'll do things to agitate against their borders, causing them to react. So two things can be true at once, folks. Yes, it can be true that Russia was wrong to invade, but it can also be true that Russia was provoked. And this is how people need to start looking at things. Stop saying it's one way or the other way. Sometimes two things are true at the same time. But one thing I think we can all agree to is the fact that NATO and the US government, they want to continue to feed that war machine over and over again. Because you don't go from peace talks to, okay, we're just going to bomb you again. It's a mess. Absolute mess. Let's go to some of the comments here. Shout out to Tavis for becoming a new member. Give Tavis a big whoop whoop. Shout out to Ali. Thank you. I truly believe that the poll numbers are fake. This is how the Dems will justify her win when they rig the elections. Free Palestine. Interesting. Thank you, Jay. Yes, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, make sure you answer that poll question. Thanks, Jay. I think it's over for Ados if Kamala wins. Sad. We'll get into that. Hold on, Jay. We'll get there. Oh, and I think you sent this. I think it's over Rightus Ados if Kamala wins. Sad. I think you sent that twice. Thank you, Blueser, for the generous super chat. Sabby, what's the link for the kids back to school donation? I am going to announce that later in the show. So I'll put that back up there as well. Thank you so much for that. Jariah, he doesn't really yell. Yeah, that's why it was hard for me to find those pictures, I guess. Thank you, Goba. The U.S. is trying to bog Russia down in an unwinnable war. They did it before using Afghanistan and the Mujahideen. We know how that turned out. Bin Laden, the chickens come home to roost. Yeah. Thank you, Marvin. World War III / false flag op freeze U.S. elections. Kamala Harris president. That is an interesting prediction there, Marvin. Interesting. Thank you, Nordren. Everyone in Europe knows Ukraine has already lost. Yeah. They're just continuing to sacrifice their own people. That's what Zelensky's doing at this point when you're pulling people off the street. Thank you, Lawn Guy. Putin just met with Prez and sent arms to Iran. There you go. What did I tell you? Who do you think they're going to back? Israel or Iran? There you go. And thank you for this, Lawn Guy. Sabby, have you watched Ukraine on Fire? Please do. I still have to watch that. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you so much. Based. If you haven't had a chance to do so, folks, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we're rolling on to a really interesting story. Tulsi Gabbard, She hasn't been in the news for quite a bit, but she's back in the news now, and not for good reasons. It appears that Tulsi Gabbard has been placed on a domestic terrorist watch list. I kid you not. Pretty interesting considering that Tulsi Gabbard is someone who is vocally pro-Israel and vocally Islamophobic. She tried to pretend like she's not, but she is. She is. She's always been that way as long as I can remember. And yet now she is on a domestic terrorist watch list. She is blaming the Biden administration for this one. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your seats. It's a doozy out here. Let's go ahead and bring in this clip. We have two clips about this particular issue. We're going to start off first with the Fox News clip.
So what exactly did Tulsi Gabbard do to get added to the terror watch list? It came the day after she criticized the Biden administration right here on The Angle.
Our foreign policy decisions are being made by unelected people in the military-industrial complex who are profiting from us being in a constant state of war, and the national security state that has more power to undermine our freedoms and liberties when we are in a state of war. Kamala Harris does not have the strength to stand up to the military-industrial complex.
Pause. Okay. Just based on that statement that Tulsi Gabbard made there alone, do you think that is enough to put her on a domestic terrorist watch list? I've seen other people make those same statements. Or it could be the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was a former congresswoman. It also could be the fact that she was a former congresswoman who basically ended Kamala Harris's presidential hopes in the past by talking about her record on the debate stage. It could be because of that, combined with her being a congresswoman, combined with the speech that she just gave there. Or do you think it is something else? Let's continue here.
Okay, that's wild. Joining me now, Tulsi Gabbard, former U.S. Congresswoman, Fox News contributor. Tulsi, now, you serve this country in uniform, even getting deployed to Iraq. Thank you for going, unlike Tim Walz. And now you're being surveilled. I mean, it's a form of surveillance or hassling and intrusion upon your freedom to move by the government. What is this? I mean, I didn't believe it really when I first heard about it. I said, oh, that can't be. But how does this make you feel?
So let's remember, folks, another reminder, Tulsi Gabbard is active duty military, right? So imagine being active duty military and you're calling out the military industrial complex, right? So that's the double whammy too. But that's not the first time that she has done that. I've heard Tulsi Gabbard speak about this before in the past. Why now?
Laura, this is a clear act of political retaliation. There's no other way to put it. You laid out the sequence of events the very next day after my conversation with you on the air, warning the American people about how dangerous a Kamala Harris presidency would be. I was placed on this domestic terror watch list, which is called the Quiet Skies list under the Department of Homeland Security. The clear pain and real visceral hurt that comes from this is, as you mentioned, like many Americans, I enlisted because of the terrorist attacks on 9/11 to go after the Islamist terrorists who attacked us on that day, and to now have my own government now turn around and put me on a domestic terror watch list. It hits to the core and is the ultimate sense of betrayal. But we look at why they are doing this. It has a chilling effect. It sends a warning both to me and to anyone else who even thinks about daring to criticize our own government, which is a guaranteed protected right under the First Amendment.
Yeah.
That we will be subject to a violation of our Fourth Amendment right to privacy through this kind of surveillance. And that's the biggest stress that's been caused by this entire situation, Laura, is now forever. I will always be looking over my shoulder, wondering if and how our government in any of these different agencies is surveilling me, watching me. Are they reading my text messages? Are they listening to my phone calls?
Did Tulsi Gabbard have that same response when this was happening to students that were protesting against the genocide in Gaza? Some of those students that were put on list, thanks to people like Bill Ackman, some of those students that were put on lists and they were told, do not hire these students students that were put on lists that said that these students need to be targeted? Did she have that same type of response when people lost their job because they were criticizing the state of Israel? So you see, this is something I want you guys to think about here for a second, because I think now Tulsi Gabbard is getting a little bit of a taste of her own medicine, because she was one of the most vocal people that was saying, I've been telling everybody that these people in the United States are becoming radicalized by Islam and we need to shut it all down. Miss Pro-free speech, Miss In the Wars, Tulsi Gabbard, who I saw speak at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. She all of a sudden, it turns when it's about Israel versus when it's about Russia and Ukraine and other countries as well. But once it became about Israel, she wanted to censor people. She wanted people to be doxxed. She approved of that. She was okay with that. She was okay with people being watched. She was okay with, let the government surveil them, do all those things. We need to stop this from happening, do whatever we can to protect Israel. She was totally fine with that. But now it's happening to her. And this is why I say that when it comes to censorship, when it comes to pro-free speech, it shouldn't just be about the free speech that you agree with. Tulsi Gabbard was against the speech and the rhetoric that the protesters were saying during the pro-Palestinian encampments and protests out in the streets. She was on Fox News multiple times criticizing it. She criticized it multiple times on her Twitter account. She did not want it said. She was totally fine with shutting them down. But now people are trying to shut her down. And you know what's weird and crazy? She supported and defended Israel. Full stop. Full stop. She spoke out against Islam over and over and over and over again. And they still put her ass on a domestic terrorist watch list. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? Let's continue.
Yeah, I was going to say yes, yes, and yes. That's what I would guess, at least. Now, in a letter from whistleblower attorney Tristan Levitt, he writes that the special mission coverage in Ms. Gabbard's case reportedly involves 2 explosive detection canine teams, 1 transportation security analyst in explosives, 1 plainclothes TSA supervisor, and 3 federal air marshals on every flight Ms. Gabbard boards. I mean, I'm not laughing, Tulsi, because this is literally like the Soviet Union, China today, North Korea, any totalitarian regime. But Donald Trump's the totalitarian, right? He's the dictator in waiting. Okay.
Yeah.
See, now Tulsi Gabbard knows how Scott Ritter feels, right? How Scott Ritter feels to be pulled off planes, have his home raided by the FBI, which that one just happened recently. Now she knows how he feels. Now she knows how some of the protesters feel. And I'm not just talking about pro-Palestinian protesters. I'm talking about BLM too. Some of those protesters that protested during BLM were never seen or heard from again. Now she knows how these people feel. She may not have agreed with what they were protesting about, but they still had a right to do it.
This is just, and this is what we know about, and we know about it because of these brave whistleblowers from the Air Marshal Service who are coming forward. What I'm questioning is, what are the things that are happening in our government that I don't know about? How long have they been surveilling me? This is just a recent occurrence. I would not be surprised to know that there are other government agencies who are also being weaponized against political opponents, those who dare to challenge this regime, the Biden-Harris administration.
I think it goes back further than that, Tulsi. Colin says same as a Uhuru, 100%. I think it goes back further than that. She wants to know how long have they been surveilling her? I don't know. This might go all the way back to the Hillary Clinton days, Tulsi. This might go back all the way back to when Tulsi Gabbard decided not to endorse Hillary Clinton and endorse Bernie Sanders. Because after that, her career in the Democratic Party as I guess like any type of Democrat leadership, because she was supposed to be tapped to be the next big thing. That was over. After she decided I'm going to endorse Bernie Sanders and not Hillary Clinton, Hillary and the Democratic Party were done with her. And then even after that, she still decided to run for president through the Democratic Party. And then she tore down their queen. She tore down their future, woman of color queen, because that's what we gonna call. They were really wanting Kamala Harris, because they were like, oh, she checks off all the boxes. She's a woman and she's a woman of color. And you know how Democrats can go over that sometimes. Then she tore down Kamala Harris, who was definitely supposed to be tapped to be their next queen, and ruin Kamala's chances, at least back then. That is obviously not the case now. So they have been waiting to come after Tulsi Gabbard for quite some time. Then she decided, I'm leaving the Democratic Party. I'm a registered independent. But then she goes over and gets a show on Fox News, etc. Honey, they were gonna come for you.
And that's really what it comes down to, and why they have to be stopped.
They have
we
to
are
be
guaranteed
defunded.
the right to life,
be
liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I cannot be free. And you pointed to this. Yes, exactly. I cannot be free so long as my government is breathing down my neck and watching my every move.
Well, we got to go, but we're going to be following this closely, demanding that this be completely withdrawn, and whoever is responsible for this decision, and there's one person who made the decision, should be fired immediately. But this should never, ever happen in the United States of America.
To anyone.
Tulsi, no, to anybody.
Thank you.
I think this is the tip of the iceberg, and I know Donald Trump is not surprised by any of this. Tulsi, thank you very much. So what?
Now, there's another clip I want to show you, too, where it's actually just Tulsi Gabbard speaking, and she goes a little bit more in detail. But I would say at this point, I know she's blaming the Biden-Harris administration, but I think this goes all the way back to Hillary Clinton. I really do. That is one vindictive woman. This clip here, I want you to see. Shout out to Hotspot. Tulsi Gabbard says she is pursuing legal action against the Biden-Harris administration for placing her on the domestic terrorist watch list. And I say this too because I kind of feel like when she went after Kamala Harris' record, as she should have on that debate stage, I feel like Kamala Harris has basically just been waiting all these years to she was like, obviously, again, like Denzel's character in Training Day. Oh, you motherfuckers. That was Kamala was waiting. She was waiting in the wings. She was rubbing her hands and she was just like, oh, just wait for it, Tulsi. Just wait. But I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary Clinton was the one to initiate it. This has Clinton-esque vibes.
The closest word that I could think of that can begin to describe what I felt and what I feel in learning that actually, according to these whistleblowers, that I am on this Quiet Skies list, that my own government, my president, my commander-in-chief is targeting me as a potential domestic terrorist. The closest word that comes to mind is a complete sense of betrayal. And it's betrayal because I, like so many Americans, enlisted because of the Islamist terrorist attacks on 9/11, enlisted to serve in our country's military, to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people, to go after and defeat and destroy those Islamist terrorists who continue to pose the greatest short and long-term threat to us, to our security, and to our freedom. And so now, after serving over 21 years and continuing to serve in our nation's military, my own government has labeled and is targeting me directly now as a domestic terrorist, as they are many others. I'm not alone in that.
Let me just say something.
Of course.
Let me just say something really quick. Just because you're still active duty in the military doesn't mean they can't come after you. They've been known to do this before. So just because you're in the armed forces doesn't mean they're not going to come after you. But Tulsi, they watching you. And they've been watching you for quite some time. They were just waiting for the right time to strike. And I'll tell you, if she does think it's the Biden-Harris administration, I'll say this. They're probably sitting back there and Kamala's probably like, you're not going to mess with I'm sorry. I'm in a silly mood. Kamala's sitting back there and she's like, you're not going to mess this up for me again this time. Kamala's like, you are not going to mess this up for me again this time.
Of course, this list is not being made public, but we can look to what the Biden-Harris administration has done in multiple cases of how they have There have been leaked conversations, leaked files, leaked documents, and even statements they've made in public saying that this threat of domestic terrorism and extremism is so great, and often very likely it is those in the military or military veterans who are these potential threats here at home. It is more than a slap in the face. It's more than a punch in the gut. It is a complete betrayal coming from our own government that they are using our taxpayer dollars, our resources. They're using people like the air marshals as weapons and pawns to target their political opponents. And that's really what this is all about.
Tulsi, honey, you're not special. You are not special just because you are in the military. That means nothing to listen. You right now are a tool that the U.S. government can use as a soldier. You are a tool that they can use when need be. That does not mean that you are above reproach. That does not mean that they will not target you, that they will not come after you. So it seems like she was somewhat surprised by this. And that's why I'm just I'm kind of taken aback. Like, really, Tulsi? After everything that you've seen happen politically, you're surprised that you are being targeted?
As a person, I feel, not only for myself, but for my brothers and sisters in uniform, for those who have literally put their lives on the line to go after and defeat those terrorists who attacked us on 9/11, those who continue to pose a threat to us today, and all of that, to have our own government come and point and set their sights on us and set their targets on us.
No, not set their targets on us. No, us is you. They setting their target on you. No, us. There's no us in this situation. They're looking at you and coming after you. And just because you decided to join the army after 9/11 to go fight for your country, that does not mean the U.S. government owes you a damn thing, okay? Talk to the soldiers who fought in Vietnam and came back to the U.S. and couldn't get a job. Talk to the veterans who went to Afghanistan, the other veterans who went to Iraq and came back here and had PTSD and couldn't get the help that they needed from the VA and ended up on the streets. Talk to those people. Okay, I come from a military family. So the government not supporting you and not helping you after you served your country for all those years, that is not surprising to me. And if Tulsi Gabbard would have been paying attention to some of the things that some of these soldiers were complaining about, especially when we talk about benefits after they have served their country, she would have known that there are all these homeless veterans out on the street. She would have known that the VA has left a lot of these soldiers behind, a lot of these people behind, whether they have mental health issues, physical issues, even when it comes to housing. And people wonder why there's so many veterans sleeping on the street. But Tulsi didn't take into consideration that she was getting a certain type of treatment that average veterans were not getting because she was a congresswoman. And then she went from being a congresswoman to you might be tapped to run for president. And then she went from being a presidential candidate to moving over to Fox News and all that jazz. So now she knows that the same treatment that she's getting from the U.S. government about them not caring that you fought for your country, that is the same way they've treated the everyday soldiers who fought for their country. They don't give a damn. They got what they needed from you, and that's a done deal, boo. That's all they care about. That's it. And I think Tulsi thinks that because she signed up with the military and she decided to go fight these wars and she decided to fight for her country, that her government in turn owed her something. But in the United States, one of the things I can tell you for those of us who were raised here in the United States, you learn that the government don't really owe you shit. There's more they should do for us, but it's not guaranteed. And they don't make you feel bad about the fact, or they don't make themselves feel bad about the fact that they're not doing anything for you in return. They do not care. You know, so I don't know what she was expecting to happen here, especially since you sat there on TV, Tulsi Gabbard, and you came after those students and you came after all the people. You smeared all those people, calling them anti-Semitic because they were, cheering for Palestine and asking for a genocide to stop. And you sat up there and you clapped and you tap danced for Israel and you called, all these people radical Islamists and all that stuff. And who does the government decide to put on a domestic terrorist watch list? You.
Saying that, no, actually, we are the domestic terrorists. Why? Of course, there's no explanation given, which is why we are taking legal recourse, why I'm so grateful for these whistleblowers and having the courage to stand up and present the evidence and proof, because these secret lists, there are many of them. Quiet Skies is one of them. There are others that have occurred ever since 9/11 with the Patriot Act, weaponizing these institutions against Americans. All of these secret lists, there's no recourse. There's no way to know truly if you're on the list, how to get off the list, why you're on the list, why my own government is seeing me as a domestic terrorist. I can't tell you why, but I can make some assumptions based on the record of this administration, that this is yet another tool they are using against their political opponents. Yeah. Obviously, I've been very outspoken about the dangers of the Biden-Harris administration to our democracy and to our freedom and to our national security.
Yeah, but you're not the only person that has been vocal about that. That's the other thing. If that were the case, then I could understand. But there have been numerous people that have been outspoken about that particular issue, and they weren't put on the domestic terrorist watch list. So this is not, I don't want people to hear this and just assume that Tulsi Gabbard is the only one, this is like some special case or whatever. Other people have been making those same statements, some going a little bit even deeper than that, right? And they didn't put them on a list.
And this is what happens as a result.
Yeah. So it's wild and crazy out here in these streets, guys. It's wild and crazy out here in these streets. Tulsi Gabbard changed a lot from the years when I remember when she was in Congress and then when she was running for president. And I knew people that were Tulsi supporters back then. And even they'll tell you, they're just like, it's crazy, like how she flipped. She basically became an opportunist. But I think the lesson to learn from this story is that sometimes becoming an opportunist doesn't really benefit you in the end, because they still targeted her in the end anyway. Well, anyway, she is trying to file a lawsuit against the Biden-Harris administration because she was placed on that list. But I'll be honest with you guys, I don't think it's really going to go anywhere. I mean, she can file the lawsuit, yes, but I don't think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be held accountable, even if that is true. We don't know, but I don't think it'll go anywhere. What a mess, man. What a mess. Ay. Woo! Crazy stuff. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Lav66. Only Aaron at the gray zone holds the position that Putin was wrong to invade, not the whole of the gray zone. That's right. Thank you for that reminder. Tavis, Tulsi is a thorn in everyone's side. LOL. She always keeps coming back, don't she? She does keep coming back. I'm telling you, Kamala's like, when that happened, when she basically ended Kamala's presidential run at that point in time, Kamala kept that in the back of her head and was just waiting for it to pull that card out. Thank you for the super chat. Word from the point. Being back the Uhuru 3 soon. September 3rd, 2024 is the trial. Yes. Thank you for reminding me about that. That is true. September 3rd, guys, 2024 is the Uhuru trial. That's going to be in Tampa. New York Varsity said she was on the board of Foreign Affairs and Homeland Security. She knows Harris is not qualified. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you, Jasmine. Anti-war rhetoric will be considered not only unpatriotic, but treasonous if things like this keep up. And thank you for this as well. To my last point, it'll be coded in law. I mean, I could see that happening. Thank you, Marco. Eisenhower originally named the MIC the Military Industrial Congressional Complex, but his speechwriter suggested he change it. Tulsi and current members of Congress are complicit with the MICC. Ooh, that is a good point. Thank you, Waz81. That is the perfect example of karma, but in an enjoyable way. This is perfect. Now everybody, karma, chameleon. They come and go. They come and go. That's right. Thank you for the super chat, Trusting Success. Hey, Sab, you are on point as usual. Can you shout out a new Sabby fan, Martin? He likes your commentary. Jill Stein for president. Let's give a big shout out to Martin. What's up, Martin? Hey. Thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Sabby, you and every person of color is on the list. I don't think so. I don't think so. But if I was, it is what it is. But damn. Thank you, Was81. She is like Netanyahu. Islamist, terrorist, hitting us and no one more Islamist. Yeah, she's I remember when I used to think that Tulsi was against like all of these wars. And then I started to hear her rhetoric. And this is before October 7th. I heard some of her rhetoric around the Muslim countries. And I was like, ooh, yikes. Not cool. Not cool. Again, like I said, I saw her, and you can find the video on my channel. I saw her at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I was there. I live streamed the event. I saw her there giving that speech. And then when I heard her rhetoric on Israel, I was like, girl. Yes, Jaira. Yes. She is super scared of it. Yeah, she is. I don't know. She's weird. She's weird. I don't know. Anyway, I guess I'll keep my eye on that story. All right, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we're going to go ahead and dive in the next story. We are doing good time, guys. So I am proud of us. I'm proud of us making good time. We have two more stories to cover. Someone sent me this. It was a panel on CNN, and they were discussing Donald Trump questioning Kamala Harris's race. And it was a panel discussion. And they said, can you please comment on this? Now, people send me a lot of things. I don't get to comment on everything. But I saw this one and I said, I should probably comment on this. So the question comes back into the room about whether or not Kamala Harris is a Black American. And I want to explain to people what that really means, because people have to understand that Black Americans are an ethnic group. So when you hear people, particularly those online, a lot of this is online, when you hear people online say she is not Black, that is what they are referring to. Let's get into this panel here. And I'm going to show you something that an author who's been talking about this for years, way before many of us even heard of Kamala Harris, something that she wrote many years ago. Let's get into it.
Donald Trump's attempt to wrestle back the election spotlight this week may have succeeded, but not in the way some of his allies hoped. The former president, trying to appeal to religious and Black voters, seemed to fall back to his default setting of divide and try to conquer.
Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black.
Donald Trump, who's made a concerted effort to reach out to Black voters, questioning the vice president's racial identity during an appearance before Black journalists.
So I don't know, is she Indian or is she Black?
It doesn't seem to have been a mistake. At a rally hours later, the campaign displayed this headline: watch Kamala Harris sworn in as first Indian American senator.
Everything about Kamala Harris roll out, it's phony and it's fake.
Earlier in the week, Trump's focus was on religion.
My beautiful Christians, I love you. You gotta get out and vote.
Urging key voting blocs to support him while also attacking Harris.
She doesn't like Jewish people. She doesn't like Israel.
Harris's husband is Jewish, but that didn't stop Trump.
How does a Jewish person vote for a Democrat? How does a Catholic person vote for a Democrat?
Kristen, why is Trump questioning Kamala Harris's race? Is there a strategy here?
Let me pause before she comments, and I just want to say something. I posted a video earlier today, two of them actually, that were not a part of a live stream. The Kamala Harris border story and the Trump-Elon conversation last night. So I posted those as separate clips today, which you'll see me do quite a bit throughout this election season, just because news breaks like every day. It's crazy. So I can't always wait for a live stream. Sometimes I just need to cover that one story and just upload that clip. But something that I noticed, and I called this out in the discussion that Trump had with Elon Musk as well, Donald Trump needs to stop going around telling people that Kamala Harris dislikes Jewish people. He needs to stop telling people that she dislikes Israel. It is very obvious that she's taking money from AIPAC. We've talked about this before over and over on this show. We've played videos where she's given statements and speeches at AIPAC saying that she will, Israel has a right to defend itself and she has unwavering support for Israel. So he needs to stop with Israel with Kamala Harris, because that is obviously debunkable. Okay. At that point, you're just trying to come up with stuff to try to get people to turn away from her. And my thing is, again, like I said before, if you really want to attack Kamala Harris politically, you need to focus on her record, which he is not doing. Now, let's get to this conversation because there's some stuff to say.
I don't know if there's a strategy. We know that Donald Trump is very driven by his impulses. We know that his impulses often lead him to say things that make people want to pull their hair out and go, can you believe this guy was our president, might be our president again? And I'm so used to hearing these things and getting asked, like, will this affect the race? And I'm used to thinking, no, it probably won't. But in a race that is going to be as close as this one, maybe in a race where it feels like nothing matters, everything matters. I mean, there's a chance that what he's trying to do here is drive the message that she's phony. She's changed her positions on X, Y, and Z. She tries to be whoever she thinks she needs to be in the moment. But frankly, with his numbers growing the way they were among Black men in particular, to go and be kind of openly weird and hostile about the race issue seems totally counterproductive to me.
Whether he just slipped in this by impulse or intended to do it, after raising the race issue at the reporters' conference, Trump posted an old video of Harris and actress Mindy Kaling cooking together.
Okay, so what we're going to cook today is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because you are Indian.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that.
Now, Trump claimed this proves Harris is a stone-cold phony. She uses everybody, including her racial identity. Kara?
Let me pause here for just a second, because I saw that conversation that she had with Mindy King. So here's the thing. Some people saw that video and they said, oh, well, she's biracial, so she claimed one side and not the other. This is not uncommon, etc. Not from my experience, because this is another thing that people have to understand. I have biracial people in my family. Okay. I went to school overseas. I went to Dodge school. So I went to school with everybody, especially in the military community. A lot of people, at least it wasn't then. I don't know what's going on in the military now. But at that point in time, it wasn't uncommon to have friends that had parents that were in an interracial relationship. So what I'm trying to tell you is this. None of my friends and none of my family members that were biracial only claimed one side of their race. I never heard any of my friends say this conversation here with Mindy, where she said, Mindy's telling her, oh, you're Indian. And Kamala goes, yes, yes. Kamala doesn't correct her and say that she's Indian and she's also Jamaican. She doesn't do. In fact, I've seen her do this a couple of times. I saw her do it with the reporter when she was about to win the Senate seat, or they were waiting to find out if she was going to win. And they said to her, if you win, this is on video. If you win, you will be the first Indian senator. And Kamala Harris said yes. She didn't correct the reporter and say, well, Indian and Jamaican. So this is why, and it's not just Donald Trump. We'll get into where other Black people have pointed this out. It's not just Donald Trump, but this is where it comes from. Because when people see that you're not willing to claim that other side, or you're only willing to claim that other side when it is beneficial for you, people are going to look at you and call you fake and phony. And that's basically what he's doing. And Donald Trump is not the first person to do that. Black people were doing that first. Black people were calling Kamala Harris out about this first because it was true. It was whoever she was around at that point in time. It seemed like that's what she was. And there's video for this. So this is not about how everybody else is handling this situation. This is specifically about Kamala Harris and how she handles this situation. Let's continue.
What's going on here?
Well, you didn't play all of it. And in that clip, she also says, half of me understands this, which she was talking about being Indian and also black. And so he keeps Grandpa had a bad week. I don't know what else to say. I don't know why he does this. I don't know why he keeps focusing on race. If he wants to talk about her policy flip-flops, he should talk about her policy and not, that's where he would do better.
But I've said that too. And that's another thing I've added, that he needs to focus on her record. Really, because that's how Tulsi Gabbard really nailed Kamala Harris, was she focused on Kamala Harris's record. That's what you really need to be focusing on. That being said, what I did not like that this panel did is because, at least at the start of the panel, we'll get to the rest, they tried to make it seem like he was the one that started this. He did not start this. Donald Trump was not the first person to call out Kamala like basically being phony. Black people were doing it first. Does everybody understand this? Black people were doing it first. But liberal media would have you believe that is not the case. So what is Donald Trump trying to do? This is what you really need to ask yourself. What he's trying to do is he's seen the things that Black people have said about Kamala Harris. And don't forget, he has people that are a part, in his space, that are Republicans, that are Black Republicans, and they've seen some of these statements too. So Donald Trump is trying to use those statements himself and use it against Kamala Harris in order to try to find a way to gain Black supporters for his campaign. That's a strategy, part of a strategy that he's been trying to use. Now, obviously, it is not working out well for him. He's getting a lot of criticism for doing it. And Black people who say those things as well also get criticism for doing it, but they don't get criticized as heavily as Donald Trump does. Let's continue.
Take this argument, she's phony, she's fake, she flips. She was Indian American. Now she's Black.
But she wasn't.
I understand, but to make that argument.
No, I don't think it's a good argument. I think that it's a good argument if you want to argue about fracking or if you want to argue about immigration or anything else. But this makes no sense. I don't even understand it.
As Kristen mentioned, Trump has been making a major push to win Black voters, especially young Black males. In a recent poll, Harris leads among Black voters 78% to 15%, but that's still closer than how Trump ran against Biden back in 2020.
And what I think a lot of people don't want to admit to is that Donald Trump did not have 15% support among the Black community in 2020 or 2016. The number has increased over the years. Now, we expect the Democrat candidate to have higher support with the Black community because the majority of Black voters vote for the Democratic Party. So we expect that to happen. However, we do not expect the Republican candidate to continue to increase support with the Black community, and that has been happening.
Lulu, does questioning Harris's race kill Trump's outreach to Black voters?
It is ridiculous. And not only is it ridiculous, but, he seems to not understand the concept of being biracial. And frankly, it is the largest growing group among young people in this country. America understands what it means to be biracial. The fact that Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand this makes him look incredibly out of touch, not only offensive and not only racially insensitive.
Let me just pause here for a second. This woman here, her name is Lula Garcia. Okay. Lula Garcia, she is Cuban and Panamanian, right? But you could probably look at her and say, okay, well, actually, she could kind of pass, like if you don't see her name, especially, she could kind of pass, that kind of thing. But it's not just, I don't think this is just about being biracial, right? I think this is about Kamala Harris choosing to flip flop when it suits her best. And it's not just about her race. She's done it on fracking. She's done it on healthcare. She's doing it right now on the border. Depending on who she's around and who's in the room, she tends to flip on these issues. So these are the kind of things that I've seen. We just talked about this earlier today with Ahmad, who was here, who was talking about the things that she said to protesters behind closed doors versus what she said to protesters in front of everybody else versus what she's saying from her campaign when she's putting out information on Twitter. There are three different statements, but you're talking about the same topic. So I think the point that he was trying to do is to show to people that she flip-flops to fit the situation that is presented in front of her.
Not only offensive and not only racially insensitive.
Ryan?
So I don't think this is necessarily a good thing. But what I will say is that for a lot of Americans, particularly a lot of Black Americans, there is some sense of discomfort about the fact that when you look at high profile, high status, successful Black Americans, many of them are themselves multiracial, first or second generation Americans, immigrants or kids of immigrants, or they're themselves intermarried. There are some folks, there's a group called the American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS, a kind of emerging movement that you see in some spaces where people say, hey, wait a second, you have folks who are not part of this multi-generational, long Black American story who are claiming this mantle.
Before she jumps in, let's go back to the thing about the skin color, because this is important, right? Because this goes back to colorism. So listen to this part.
So I don't think this is necessarily a good thing. But what I will say is that for a lot of Americans, particularly a lot of Black Americans, there is some sense of discomfort about the fact that when you look at high profile, high status, successful Black Americans, many of them are themselves multiracial, first or second generation Americans, immigrants or kids of immigrants, or they're themselves intermarried.
Or they have lighter skin altogether. So this is something I noticed when I was growing up, when I was a kid, right? This is back in the day, so walk with me for just a second. When I was a kid, I noticed when I looked at the front cover of magazines, now people don't really buy them, I guess, that much anymore. But I remember when I did see a Black model on the cover of a magazine, it was usually someone that was biracial or someone that was light-skinned. With the exception was Naomi Campbell. Naomi Campbell was the exception, right? But even Naomi Campbell was an American, right? So when you saw someone like Tyra Banks, it was like, whoa, wow, like one of us really made it, right? But even Tyra was light-skinned. And don't let this ring light fool you, okay? Everybody like, oh, Sabby, you're like, no, I'm not. I'm not light-skinned. That is the lighting. Very different. But these are the things that I saw when I was growing up as a kid. That's typically how it was. It was the lighter skinned women were on the cover of the magazines, and that lasted for quite some time. And every now and then you would have like that one, darker skinned person that was there. Now we fast forward and we go to positions of power. We had the first Black president. It was Barack Obama. Barack Obama was biracial, right? If you look at a lot of these positions where people are higher up or they tend to get pretty far, he's right about what he's saying there, that it's usually, particularly in this country, it's like they're either lighter skin, so there's a colorism factor, or they are internationals, or they immigrated to the United States. Those people are seen in a different light than people like me. And so when he gets into the ADOS conversation, I can go a little bit deeper about that, because I think what sometimes people just don't understand, especially if you live in a place like I live in the Boston area, it's an international hub. A lot of times what people don't realize is that people like me, when I first came here, it was very tough for me because I'm not a part of the community. So I can go to Dorchester, I can go to Roxbury, I can go to Mattapan, and people may have the same complexion as me, but they don't consider me to be one of them because I'm a Black American. We'll get into that a little bit more, but he's right about that. He has a point. Let's continue.
There are some folks, there's a group called the American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS, a kind of emerging movement that you see in some spaces where people say, hey, wait a second, you have folks who are not part of this multi-generational, long Black American story who are claiming this mantle. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, Lulu.
I'm just saying that this is an argument that you are putting forward.
This is something I'm talking about as an analyst to describe the fact that the Black community is not a monolith. There are a lot of complicated, conflicted feelings. More than twice.
Let me pause for a second. She doesn't want to hear this. You know why she doesn't want to hear it? Because for her, I told you she's Cuban and Panamanian, but she's white adjacent. For her, when she looks at all of us that are a part of the diaspora, she just sees Black because she's looking at the skin color. She doesn't stop and think that we don't have the same culture. She doesn't stop and think that a lot of times we don't even live in the same neighborhoods. There are certain neighborhoods that you can come to here in Boston that are Haitian, that are Jamaican, that are Dominican, West Indian. Same thing if you go to certain parts of New York. So in her mind, she thinks that when she looks at the diaspora, we're all Black to her. And honestly, a lot of white people think this. They just look at the skin color. They think, oh, we're all the same. We have a very different culture. And people need to understand that. And I think a lot of times they don't get that. So what he's trying to explain something to her, he's trying to educate her, and she's ready to shut him down because she doesn't want to hear it, because to her, we are all Black. Now, think about something for a second. Imagine if, because we know there's different ethnicities and all that jazz, right? Black American is a ethnic group. Imagine when, like, Americans see someone that's Asian and they assume they're Chinese. Why does that happen? As if they can't be Korean, as if they can't be Vietnamese. One of my students told me that a couple years ago. They said, why in America everybody assume we're all Chinese? Just stuff like that, But just think about that for a second. People are quick to correct you. And I'm here to let you know, some of the folks that are a part of the diaspora have been very quick to correct me. They've been very quick to tell me I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. They've been very quick to tell me I'm not Jamaican, I'm Black. They've been very quick to tell me I'm not Black, I'm Cape Verdean. Very quick to tell me that. And that's throughout my entire life. So this is what I think people like her just don't understand. Let's continue.
Twice as many Black Americans oppose intermarriage as white Americans.
Skin color is Black, you're Black. It is a completely ridiculous.
See, did you hear what she just said? Did you hear what she just said? She just looks at the skin color. She thinks we're all the same.
Argument that you are putting forward.
This is something I'm talking about as an analyst to describe the fact that the Black community is not a monolith. There are a lot of complicated, conflicted feelings. More than twice as many Black Americans oppose intermarriage as white Americans.
Skin color is Black, you're Black. It is a.
Did you hear that? If your skin color is Black, you are Black. And that is why she thinks that. You see that? Like I said, so to her logic, if she meant someone that was Dominican that had darker skin, and there are, for example, in Boston, a lot of people that are Dominican have darker skin. She would just tell them, if your skin is Black, you're Black. They'll be very quick to let you know, no, I'm not. I'm Dominican. You see the problem with what she just said? But that's how they see us. Ay.
Completely ridiculous argument to be made in a country where you had the one drop, where you had the one drop rule, where you were actually penalized legally in this country if you had a single drop of Black blood. To now say that this woman, who is clearly Black, is somehow suspicious and is wearing a mantle and trying to assume some kind of.
He's saying that she is not. Thank you, Deneen. What if someone called her Mexican? Would she correct them? Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. But again, we can't have different culture. Do you see what I mean? When they look at the diaspora, they don't see, they just all say, oh, your skin's Black, you're Black. But everybody else has different ethnic groups. We have different ethnic groups as well. So Black American is an ethnic group. And I'm going to break that down for you after this clip to show you what that means. And that's what pissed me off when she said that, as to like, we don't have differences. We do have cultural differences. Jeez Louise.
I'm describing public opinion. I'm describing the fact that this current does exist. And I think that when we're trying to understand the electorate, I think it's important to understand that this is one of those cleavages. I do not think that it was a good thing for Donald Trump to use this line of attack. I agree with Kara. Stick to policy.
This is not
but
what
it is
Donald
a
Trump,
fact.
This is not what Donald Trump was doing. You are trying to explain something. If you ask Donald Trump, if you ask Donald Trump, what were you up to, Mr. Trump? He's not going to be like, you know, that there's this current in the African American community that talks about the descendants of slavery. Do you think that is what he was up to? He was going there in order to do what he always does, which is to throw as much as he can against the wall and to see what
I'm
sticks.
afraid part of what I'm trying to do is actually try to give some insight into the fact that public opinion is changing, it's divided, and there is a big conversation about this. I don't think that this is the best angle to pursue, but I do think that when you're talking about the Black community, he's not looking to win 90% of the Black vote. He's looking at what are interesting cleavages and divides within that population, and this is one of them.
In addition to all that, there was the very explicit.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important point that he made there. A very important point. And I think, you know, what was really sad to me was for her to sit up there and to try to tell him, I think he's Black and Arab, I believe. But her to sit up there and try to tell him what is Black when she's not Black. That's the thing that killed me. I don't sit up there and try to tell you, you know, who's Cuban and who's not and all that kind of stuff. I don't go into all of that. But notice how, once again, this is the thing that I was talking about before, where other people who are not a part of that group at all try to come in and tell you what your group is. And we've seen this happen before, right? She was giving me kind of Karen vibes. That's the kind of radar that she was giving me. But we need to talk about that again. What does it mean to be Black American? And I want to break this down because I think people fully do not understand. There is an author, her name is Deborah Dickerson. Deborah Dickerson talked about this during the Obama days. She wrote an article in Salon. She's also written many books called Colorblind, right? Now I want to just jump down to this part here to make sure I get to the right part. And she talks about Al Sharpton in here too. It was really funny. Let me go here. Okay. This part right here. I believe I'm at the right part. Sorry, guys. I'm just making sure. Here we go. I'll go so far as to say that a white woman will be the Democratic nominee for president before a Black descendant of American slaves. We need to highlight this part right here. Even if Obama invokes slavery and Jim Crow, he does so as one who stands outside, one who emotes but still merely informs, one who can be respectfully tolerated because there's a limit to how far he can go in invoking history. Let's jump down here. To say that Obama isn't Black is merely to say, by virtue of his white American mom and his Kenyan dad, who abandoned both him and America, he is an American of African immigrant extraction. It is also to point out that the continuing significance of the slave experience to the white American psyche, it's not we who can't get over it. It's you lumping us together, which Blacks also do from sloppiness and ignorance, and as a way to dominate the race issue and to force immigrants of African descent to subordinate their preferences to ours, erases the significance of slavery and continuing racism while giving the appearance of progress. Though actually, it is a kind of progress. And that's why I break my silence. Obama with his non-Black ass is doing us a favor. So this article, she did some pros and cons about Obama. But the point that Deborah is driving home, and she's talked about this multiple times, and she wrote a book about this. People have to understand there is a difference. Black Americans are an ethnic group. Black Americans are those that are descendants from American slavery. Those are Black Americans. So when people say that Kamala Harris is not Black, they're not talking about the color of her skin. They're talking about the Black American ethnic group. And I don't know, maybe people should frame it that way. Because I think when a lot of people hear she's not Black, they're like, what are you talking about? Her skin is obviously, you know, but that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is she's not a Black American because it is a particular ethnic group. Just like you can't look at me and call me Jamaican. That is an ethnic group that I am not a part of. You can't look at me and call me Dominican. That is an ethnic group that I am not a part of, but I am a Black American. That's what I want people to understand. And that's what they're trying to say. They're not saying her skin color isn't such and such. They're saying that she is not an American descendant of slavery. Thus, she is not a Black American, which is a particular ethnic group. Does everybody understand that? I want that. I want to educate people here. Now, this is not to say that you get angry with someone because they're not a part of that group. No, don't go doing that. Don't go fighting with people and telling people and calling people names and all that. I'm not down for all that. Don't go doing none of that. But there is a difference. And just like you don't lump other ethnic groups together and say they're all Chinese or they're all Vietnamese, you don't do that with us either. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And people need to understand it. What killed me in that conversation was the woman who is not Jamaican, who is not Indian, who is not a Black American, was trying to tell everybody else who's Black and who's not. So there's that. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. And you notice what kills me? One thing about this panel, one more thing to say, sorry. I noticed they did not have, when they're talking about this discussion about Black Americans, they didn't have one ADOS person on that panel. And that doesn't mean it needs to be someone who is a part of the organization ADOS, but they didn't have one person on that panel that is a American descendant of slavery. Wow. Ay, ay, ay. Some people hear this and they get mad. Sabby loves everybody. Sabby comes from a multicultural, multiracial family. I love everybody. That being said, we got to get some things straight. We got to get some things straight because I done seen a number of white commentators try to say the same thing, that she's Black and da-da-da-da, obviously, da-da, look at her skin, blah, blah. Again, white people trying to tell me who's Black and who's not. Now, do you see why I started the show? There was a space that needed to be filled. All right, let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Courtney. Tulsi learned a valuable lesson. Be careful what you back in politics because the pendulum will swing back. Yeah, it seems like that's happening too. Thank you, Colin. Kamala may have a drop of Black, but I argue she is not culturally Black. She had no contact with her Jamaican father and was raised by her Indian mother. Yeah, I'm not even going into that. I'm just saying she's not a part of the Black American ethnic group. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't help who raises you. Thank you for this as well. Ruha Benjamin said, your Blackness or womanness is not trustworthy if you use your power to maintain the oppressive status quo. Thank you for that. And the other thing, if the Democratic Party wasn't promoting her as, oh, Black woman president, Black woman president, Black woman this, people wouldn't even be talking about this as much as they are. Thank you for this, Sir Bikes a Lot Day. The maybe reason for Trump ignoring Kamala's record could mean that he wishes he did those terrible things too. That's a good one. Thank you for the super sticker, whitewashed. Elwin, she was in Atlanta faking like she was from the South. I heard. Rick says, my friend did this. He is white passing and he would code switch. It's real, y'all. Thank you, Larissa. Ain't nobody voting for Kamala Bama Dolozo? Dozo? What? Oh my God. Deneen, what if someone called her Mexican? Would she correct them? Yeah, it's a good point. And thank you, NK. Exactly. CNN can't find a single Black American to explain this idea to a panel. Right. They could have reached out to Yvette Carnell, Dr. Sandy Darity, Antonio Moore. They could have brought Nina Turner on for that one. Boy, I tell you. Ay. Thank you for this, Janine. I think back in the day, we didn't trip on who is Black as long as they were on code. Now, with more of us seeing immigrants as anti-Black, we are making a point to now say American Black. Thank you so much for that. All right. Quick announcement, guys, and we'll go to our final story, and we will do call in tonight as well. Don't forget to answer that poll. We are doing the back to school barbecue and school supply giveaway this Sunday. Can't believe it came so quickly. That'll be Sunday, August 18th at 12 p.m. at the Bruce C. Bowling Municipal Building in Roxbury, 2300 Washington Street. That'll be on the first floor lobby. I'm super excited about this, you guys. We're doing really great on fundraising. Our goal was 2,000, but we are doing pretty great. So I'm proud about that. If you want to contribute, I'll go ahead and put the link here in the chat so you can contribute if you want. And thank you. Shout out to all of you that have donated. I'm super excited. We got to give the kids some supplies. This is one of those things I think that I think if you come from money, you may not think about this. But the reality is there are people that depend on like getting help, getting school supplies. I know Nick was just doing, they're doing a fundraiser to give kids haircuts at the barbershops, free haircuts for school. Like a lot of people depend on that. Not everybody can afford to give all their kids a haircut, especially if you got multiple kids. That's going to be an issue. Also, things are more expensive now. So just keep that in mind too. So yeah. Thank you guys so much for that. Based. We are moving on to the Kamala Biden. No. Scratch that. We are moving on to the Kamala Trump story here. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, things have changed in the polls. And we're talking about the swing states. This New York Times article has putting it all on the table, ladies and gentlemen. You might be surprised. Harris leads Trump in 3 key states. This is the Time/Siena poll. Let's go ahead and bring up these numbers here, folks. I know some people are like, what in the hell? This is from August 5th to August 9th. If the 2024 presidential election were held today, who would you vote for if the candidates were Kamala Harris and Donald Trump? And we're looking at these states in particular, ladies and gentlemen: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now, Kamala Harris, according to this poll, she is at 50% in Michigan, 50% in Pennsylvania, 50% in Wisconsin. Donald Trump is at 46%. Look at this: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. She has pulled ahead of him in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Again, key swing states there that you will need in order to win. I do have a question there pinned to the live chat. I'm curious to see what the result of that is. We'll get to that in just a second. But this shows that a shift has happened, ladies and gentlemen. I'm curious to hear what you guys think is the reason for this. We're going to take a look at this, and you're going to see a chart here on CNN about Trump's decline. He is declining. Look at this.
We showed you polls at the top of the program for 3 battleground states showing Kamala Harris up by 4 percentage points in each. Now, we should point out that they are all within the margin of error, which range actually from 4 to 4.5 points. So they are still technically tied. That said, they do seem to have gotten under Donald Trump's skin. Whether they have or haven't certainly marked the difference between now and what the race looked like before Biden-Harris gave way to Harris-Walz. Speaking of walls, John King is at the Magic version with more. John, so how has the vice president on the Democratic ticket changed the race in battleground states, or has it?
Some numbers in a moment, Anderson, but first let's just start with this. I have the map this way because we are now back in what we thought at the beginning of the year, before Biden's debate, before the questions about his age, that this would be the state of the race, right? 6 essentially battleground states. After that debate, remember, the Trump campaign was saying, we're going to put New Mexico in play, we're going to put Virginia in play, we're going to put New Hampshire in play, we're going to run away with this. That was the mood after the Biden-Trump debate. Well, Biden's gone. Harris is the candidate now. So at a minimum, we have reset the map to a traditional battleground state. But remember, after those last debates, it was Trump could win here, Trump could win here, and Trump could win here. Not only did the polls show that, and I'll bring them up, Anderson, but we talked about that after all of my travels into those states. So let's just look a little May and now. Trump ahead in Pennsylvania, you're exactly right. This is no clear leader statistically within the margin of error, but Trump had momentum. This Michigan poll, New York Times, Siena, had Biden ahead slightly. I can tell you from my travels, Trump had momentum there as well. And Wisconsin, tighter, but Trump with momentum. The question is, don't believe any one poll. Which way is the arrow pointing?
Which way is the arrow pointing? What you can see here is that, especially when you look at Michigan, when it was Biden and Trump, with Trump at 39%, Biden at 42% there. But like he said, remember, he was saying that he was building momentum. I think something that what we're seeing now that's happening is that it wasn't so much that a lot of people didn't want to support the Democratic Party. It seems like the people that were polled just didn't want to support Joe Biden. And I don't think it was the Israel-Gaza issue that is doing this. When you look at who was polled, I think it's just because after the debate performance, a lot of people just felt like Joe Biden was not strong enough to continue on. And we've been talking about this for years, that Joe got to go, right? So that's what it is. But the moment that they brought in Kamala Harris, you can see now in August, you see that there's a difference that came in here.
Who has the momentum? Well, look at this in August now. Harris up a little bit within the margin of error, but in Pennsylvania, up a little bit more in Michigan, up a little bit more in Wisconsin. So what does that mean? That means if the election were tomorrow and the energy and momentum you see out there right now played out, you would get that. And even if Harris lost Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona, she could get to 270 electoral votes. So those 3 states, the blue wall, make all the difference in the Democratic calculation. If she is strong in these, it opens up the possibilities across the Sun Belt.
Let me pause here for a second because I wanted to chime in here. I heard the same thing, Marvin. I heard Fetterman say PA is Trump country. I heard that same thing. But right now, the polls are not showing that. That, again, could change, right? It has changed before for Hillary Clinton. But I want to point out something here. I want to show you what this is really showing you. Now they're showing that this is leaning towards Kamala for Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, I want to tell you the difference here between her previous presidential run and the 2024 presidential run. What we all have to remember is that Kamala Harris did not participate in the 2024 Democrat primary. That means she was not on the ballot. She was just selected by leadership in the Democratic Party. And don't forget this. This makes a big difference because if she would have participated in the Democrat primary, there would have been months of this, right? Like I think the first election for the Democrat primary, I think was in February or something like that, like late February, early March or whatever. She skipped all of that. She jumped ahead. So she has less time to have to deal with interviews, to have to deal with, campaigning altogether. She wasn't out there as much as like Marianne and Dean Phillips and RFK when he was still part of the Democrat primary. So she got to skip all that. She jumped ahead. What that means is there's less time for you to embarrass yourself and make a fool out of yourself. It is August. November is just around the corner. Everybody else had to go through humility. She has less time to have to deal with that, which means I don't think the polls are going to shift so far into Trump's direction because there's not enough time left for that to happen unless she finds a way to completely humiliate herself. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this race is going to be incredibly close still. And I think we need to keep that in mind. But what I will tell you again, remember, she did not go through the Democrat primary. She was selected. So she got an opportunity that the others did not get. And that brings up another question, because if Kamala Harris wins the presidency in November, will this always come back up into play? Will people always bring up the fact that she was selected and nobody voted for her? We're going to talk a little bit more about that Thursday when I get into the DNC fraud lawsuit again. We're going to bring that back up, and we're going to get into that because people are bringing this up now that they're wondering if they can bring forth some type of lawsuit against Kamala Harris because she was selected. But I told you what the DNC argued in court. They can select the candidates. Now, I want you to show you this too. When they talk to these voters here, I want to show you how they raise their hands. They're going to mention Biden, then they mention Kamala. Watch this.
Pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz just held a focus group. Watch this.
How many of you were supporting Joe Biden 14 days ago? Raise your hands. None of you. How many of you, if the election were held today, would vote for the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris?
I would.
Okay, that's all of you.
None of you to all of you. And Frank Luntz is with us now. Frank, so thank you so much for being with us. Let me just ask you, if the election were held today, who would win?
So let me just pause here for a second, because again, they select these focus groups. So I'm pretty sure they didn't make someone a part of the focus group that's not a Democrat. So just keep that in mind.
She would win. And I want to emphasize, it's not just about momentum. And I thought your commentary just before this was dead on. It's also about passion. It's about commitment. And Harris voters are even more eager to vote for her than Donald Trump voters are to him. We've not seen that in the entire campaign. Call that intensity. And her campaign is generating the intensity. And another key component is exactly why this is happening. She's talking and emphasizing her persona, her attributes, her character traits. And that's where Donald Trump has been commenting. And the fact is, the American people do not want to hear the same kind of negativity, the same kind of attacks that he's been delivering. His strength is on issues, most particularly the two issues that matter most, inflation and immigration. But instead of speaking about those two issues and talking about the failures of the Biden administration, he's been making these personal attacks, and it's frankly turning the voters off that he needs to reach. Now,
All right. That's all I wanted you to hear from that. We're going to dive into all of that because he talks forever. But I was just going to say this part's important to remember. If it were me and I were running against Kamala Harris, I would be focusing on what she has done since she's been a part of the Biden-Harris administration. I would be focusing on her record as a prosecutor and as an attorney general in California. I would heavily focus on that. Donald Trump is not doing that. I would rail her with the economy, and I got the data. Go after the economy, go after the inflation, go after these wars, that type of thing. But he is not focusing on that. And I think that also could hurt him as well. But another thing I want to mention to you about these polls, and think about this when Simon Ataba shows you the video here from CNN, something I want you to think about. Remember, polls inspire people. So if you are undecided of who you're going to vote for, if you see a couple of polls that show you Kamala is doing pretty well, that may inspire you to vote for Kamala. Same thing for Donald Trump. That may inspire you to vote for Donald Trump. Why do you guys think they don't really want to show you how the third party candidates are polling? Because they don't want people to be inspired. And once they reach a certain limit anyway, where they can get the federal funding, which Jill Stein has already reached that in the polls. So she's eligible. She's already been approved for the federal funding. They just haven't given her the funds yet. Once that does happen, then the Democratic Party in particular with the Green Party, they usually go after them. They're going to try to do everything they can to try to knock you down and prevent you from getting to where you want to get, because they see that you could be a real threat. And I would say wait until Friday when Jill Stein announces who her VP is going to be, because that could also say some things. That could also change the game. But the reality is polls do inspire people. Listen to this.
Trump and J.D. Vance here. We know, I've been talking about J.D. Vance's net negative favorability rating. That is, more people view him unfavorably than favorably. Donald Trump has the same thing. I will point out this is among the higher numbers for Trump, but still, he's underwater here at -7 points. Jump over to the Democratic side with me, if you will. Take a look here. Kamala Harris is actually better liked by more voters than she is disliked at a +2 net favorable rating. And then Tim Walz here at a +11 rating.
This is the net favorable view in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, just FYI. And I know someone said in the chat, well, the poll said Hillary was going to win. Totally hear where you're coming from. But that was the popular vote, right? Which she did. Hillary won the popular vote. This is why this is my first time doing this as an election season. So bear with me doing this show as election season. But this is why I'm choosing to focus on the swing states, because that's what it's going to come down to. I wasn't paying attention to that in 2016. I was just looking at the popular vote. So Kamala Harris could win the popular vote and still lose if she doesn't win in the swing states, right? Same thing with Donald Trump. He could win the popular vote and still lose if he doesn't win in the swing states. Let's let him finish up here.
It's as simple as this. Politics is about being liked, and the Democratic ticket is better liked than the Republican ticket. Trump and J.D. Vance here.
Again, in those states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, that's showing the net favorable view. So now here's something that gets a little bit weird about where Latino voters stand for Kamala Harris. Get this, fam. Kamala gets the worst result among Hispanics for a Democratic candidate so far this century. The vice president leads Trump by 5 points among Latinos, whereas Biden led his 2020 rival by 33 and Obama by 44 in 2012. Clinton and Kerry, who were defeated, also had more support. So this is not to say that she's not having her own struggles as well. Apparently, when it comes to that particular demographic, according to this study, she has the worst result among that demographic when you compare her to her predecessors in the Democratic Party. That is something that we need to highlight as well. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the border. A lot of it has to do with the border. Because let's be real, some people who came here legally and followed the process are not happy that other people are coming across the border and they're given benefits, they're given debit cards and things like that, and they didn't do it that way. That's just a reality, regardless of how you feel about the border. So keep an eye out for that. And then there's also something else I noticed too with her particular campaign. It's the karma chameleon effect. Simon Ataba, everybody's saying this now. The New York Post said karma chameleon because she be flippity flopping, flippity flop. She's flippity flopping all over the place, fam. So even the New York Post is calling it out. But this is the strategy I think the Biden-Harris campaign is using. I think what they are doing is that they are running to the right on some issues and running to the left on other issues. And I think this is something Donald Trump may not know how to handle. He may not know how to deal with this. And it's something I notice, particularly if we get to the issue about the border. Now you notice that she's running to the right on the border. This was the border ad.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So now Kamala Harris is running to the right on the border. And another thing, fam, she was assigned to the border. That was her specific duty as vice president. So if she wanted to fix things at the border, she could do that right now. I don't understand why a lot of Americans are falling for this. Like, they're pretending like Kamala Harris is not even a part of the current administration. I can understand if she wasn't a part of it, but she is a part of it. So these are things that she can do right now that she's choosing not to do because she was assigned to the border. People are falling for it, fam, falling for the okie doke. And now you'll see Donald Trump now has his ad. Let's take a look at this one as well.
Trump has left the building.
We can now project the winner of the presidential race. Donald Trump wins the presidency. What started off as unlikely, impossible, is now reality.
I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down.
We have a president who actually fulfilled the promises he made during the campaign, securing the border to foreign policy.
He now has a record as president that's pretty damn impressive.
Breaking news out of Palm
The
Beach,
FBI
Florida.
has executed an unprecedented search warrant at President Donald Trump's
Mar-a-Lago
former
estate.
president has both sides of the political aisle up
Is
in
a
arms.
dangerous and unstable moment in American history.
The Justice Department has just indicted former President Donald Trump.
For 7 years, they hated him, they targeted him, they hunted him.
This is the epitome of the abuse of the prosecutorial power to preempt political decisions.
I never thought anything like this could happen in America. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. They're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way, and I will never be moving. On November 5th, 2024, justice will be done. We will take back our country, and we will make America great again. America will always rise to every challenge and overcome every danger.
Donald Trump seems to always get stronger when challenged. These types of things, I think, give him strength.
When I'm reelected, I will totally obliterate the deep state.
As long as we have pride in our beliefs, courage in our convictions, and faith in our God, then we will not fail.
So I'm just going to be honest. And did you notice what he did with that ad? The very beginning, he basically painted himself as a martyr. He showed everybody, look at all the things they tried to do to me, all the things, the ways that they tried to stop me. I'm not going to lie, that was actually smart. like, I'm not going to lie, that was actually pretty smart. And that ad is actually pretty good. Not lying there. The Kamala Harris border ad, that one, again, I don't get it. She's running to the right, like on the border or whatever. But I think, again, that's her trying to be strategic to beat Trump to that game. Like, we run to the right on that issue, run to the left on another issue. So it seems like that's what's happening there. But also that could be her trying to get more voters in Arizona, right? One of the states that I said prior to Kamala jumping in this race would be red again, right? So that could be her trying to play on that, play on those some of those swing states there, particularly the ones on the border that are dealing with the border issue. But that ad was actually pretty based. I'm not going to lie. Again, I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not voting for Kamala. I'm going to be supporting Jill Stein, but I think he has the better ad. And I did see the ad that Kamala had with the Beyonce song. And I'm not a fan of the let's put in a popular singer song in my ad. I don't like that. That's a turn off to me. I know it inspires some people. It may inspire a lot of younger people who love Beyonce. But for me, I just feel like now I feel like you're just trying to sell something to me. This is just entertainment. So I'm not a big fan of that. What is it, Elwin? Elwin said that ad was on point. Yeah, I thought that ad was actually pretty decent. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you know, and I'm feeling some kind of way. Like, that ad was pretty base. But why is she winning in the polls? Let's go ahead and look at the poll that I gave you guys to see what you believe. This is really interesting. Why is Kamala Harris ahead in swing states right now? We have 1,432 votes. 8% of you said Trump's bad comments about her. 12% said she chose Tim Walz. And What did you do there, Eric? I think it just disappeared. Oh, there we go. And it's like moving up and down. This is funny. 11% said people want a female president. 69% of you said you don't trust the polls. Interesting. That's a doozy, folks. All right, guys, we are going to do call in. I hope you are ready and pumped for that. So Eric's going to come in for just a second. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back.
All right, here we go. Yeah, I was adjusting the poll. I adjusted it the wrong way for a second there. But all right, this is the part of the show where we give Sabrina a little break before we jump over into the call-in, or as I like to call it, the Zoom hangout, because it's not really call-in anymore. It's they got rid of the call-in app on us, but what we do have is a good number of chats built up. So let's see what we got for chats. Thanks for the super chat, Tiara. Excuse me. Kamala would be considered brown, not black, when folks lump black and brown people together. Thanks for that. And thanks for this one, Cool Blue. If Kamala Harris wins, she will likely carry the 2020 map of Joe Biden with a 2024 Democratic pickup of North Carolina, 26 states, any 02 DC, 319 electoral college votes. Thanks for that super chat and analysis, Cool Blue. And yeah, we'll be giving you the link, by the way, to the Zoom hangout. Sabby's actually sets that up during her break, and we'll be getting that to you. In the meanwhile, thanks for the super chat. Love USA. What exactly has that Kamala, who changes her own races based on situation, has achieved in the last 5 years, except letting in 12 million undocumented, gave 4 million a day instead to American citizens? Okay, thanks for that. Love USA. Thanks for this one, Dr. Thunder. Excellent analysis. I'm sure Sabby thanks you for that. And thanks for this one again. Also, Cool Blue. Why Kamala may win. People are over Biden and Trump. Yep. I mean, it is a new face. It doesn't hurt. And this one from Cool Blue. Trump is not campaigning. He is on a grievance tour. I hear you. And also, thanks for this one. 2020 Biden on PV by 4.45 by plus 4.45. 2024 Harris may win by +5. This is why, if she does end up winning, she would go from Biden's 25 to her 26 carried states. And excuse me. And thanks for the super chat, GDNPD. Sorry, but what they do to Tulsi is just giving themselves the right to do to us, everyone. Same as what they're doing to Trump and many of the others. One day, you and me, 1984 is here. Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree that, that there's the whole surveillance state. It's definitely in a huge issue. This gets into things like, authoritarianism and control, and, even things like narrative management of, they really want to try to control what people are saying. They really, the corporate establishment, certainly does not like dissent. In that kind of authoritarianism and it's carrots and sticks, right? If you play ball, you get a nice job in media or government. You get a good salary and you get nice things said about you. If you're a dissenter and you're not going along the system, well, then you're not promoted. You're not going to get that job, and even worse, you may end up on a list. And there's a different kind of blacklist, and the corporate establishment, the system has all kinds of ways of making it hard on people in dissent. And the main thing I would say with the with the Kamala Harris and Trump and all the chatter and all in the news is I think it's important to always remember the main goal is to make sure that you're voting for one or the other, right? That's what they really want to make sure happens. And, they don't want you, looking over what Jill Stein's doing, or any other third party candidates, because, that would be a real threat to the power. Whereas whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump gets elected, in either case, the billionaires win, right? The corporate establishment and the power structure wins, as long as it's one of them. And so I just think it's always important at the end of that to always look at that, and always look at, the money and corruption is what's really, on display for both of them. So, always keep your eye on that. And, always have demands, MCDS, and that'll lead you to solutions. Yeah.
All right. Well said there. We are going to head into call-in. We're going to move quickly because I do know I have a hard stop tonight because I have early appointment. Thank you, Anton. Real reason Kamala is running, protect Epstein. Oh, interesting. Interesting. All right, guys, we're going to head on over to call-in or the Sabby After Show. That link is pinned to the top of the chat. I want to go ahead and put the passcode up here as well, just in case they ask for it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they do not. So let me go ahead and do that.
All right. We'll see you in the call-in.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right. And the passcode is, as soon as this update here, right there on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and open the Zoom room. I like to do that while I'm still on here because just to make sure everyone can get into the room. All right. I see people already coming in. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Great, great, great. Cool. Looks like people getting in with no problem. Anyone have to enter the passcode? All right. So you can come on to the call-in show, folks, and we can talk about the show. If you want to ask me a question, the way that you do that on here on Zoom, you just go to the bottom where it says reactions. You click on reactions and you raise your hand. So that's how I know you want to talk. And many of you have done this before. Everyone just go ahead and mute really quick. And Eric, I'll make you a co-host so you can start muting people. As soon as I find Eric on here. Oh, there you are. I'll make you a co-host.
I think the raised hand is its own button now.
Oh, it isn't on mine. Oh, well.
Oh, it's still under reactions? All right. Well, it's either its own button, it's under reactions, or it's under more.
All right. Let's go ahead and start. If you can mute people, Eric, and I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because I do have a hard stop tonight. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Have a good night. Keep up the shite. Keep up the fight. I said keep up the shite. Keep up the fight.